At risk, and the country is on the brink of widespread conflict. The summit on Ukraine by European leaders has unanimously agreed not to lift any sanctions imposed on Russia. Their meeting, President Volodymyr Zelensky has wrapped up in Paris in the last hour. The summit addressed how to protect Kiev's security and Europe's role in enforcing any potential peace deal with Russia. Israeli forces have carried out several airstrikes targeting Palestinians across the Gaza Strip. At least 22 people have been killed since dawn on Thursday, with several more wounded. The strikes have targeted displaced Palestinians, many of whom are living in tents. Civil defense teams say they're struggling to reach bodies that are buried under the rubble of destroyed buildings, and hospitals don't have enough supplies to provide care for survivors. Children in Gaza are risking their lives to get enough food to eat. Several children were taken to hospital on Wednesday after Israeli forces attacked a queue of people waiting for food in central Gaza. Israel continues to block desperately needed food and aid from getting into the strip. Tariffs reports from Bitchute in central Gaza.
Since the Israeli unilateral breach of the first phase of the ceasefire agreement, we understand that they started a new military incursion for Rafah district, in particular for Tel Sultan neighborhood, which is located at the western end of this battered city, where more than 50,000 Palestinians have been informed by the Israeli occupation forces to leave the area to move to the designated safe humanitarian zone. But dramatically, families have been trapped as they were trying to make their journey to Al-Mawasi, and based on the testimonies of the civil defense and the emergency workers of the Palestinian prisons, we're talking about 15 emergency first responders have been messing with no further details about the fate where the Palestinian Red Crescent had condemned the Israeli attack on ambulances affiliated to the association, and they have been calling for further illustration about the fate of those emergency responders. And this is not the first time or the first attack to take place against those emergency responders. They were doing their humanitarian work, facilitating the evacuation of injured people. Simply that we have received testimonies from eyewitnesses regarding this military incursion for Tel Sultan neighborhood, confirming that Israeli ground forces have carried out field executions, including one woman that had been shot in front of her kids in Rafah, which could be a sign of the scale of brutality and the unprecedented escalation taking place.
Ambulances have come under fire near Rafah in southern Gaza. That's according to the Palestinian Red Crescent Society, which says several medical workers have been killed or injured in the last few days while in a designated safe zone.
For the fifth day in a row, we haven't been able to contact 9 members of our crews in Tal Sultan area. The crews came under direct Israeli fire. It is certain that some of our crew members were killed and injured. We have been trying to coordinate with the WHO, ICRC, and OCHA. Only yesterday we received a green light to rush to the scene. Unfortunately, the road was completely cut off by sand barriers. Until now, we haven't been able to reach our crew members in distress. We are now trying to get a green light for a bulldozer to clear the road in order to reach the teams besieged in Tal Sultan.
Countries across the world have expressed their concern about US President Donald Trump's plan to impose a 25% tariff on all imported cars from April. South Korea's government says it plans an emergency response in the coming days, predicting the industry will face considerable difficulties. Last year, nearly 50% of Seoul's car exports were to the US. Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva says Washington risks damaging the US economy with additional tariffs. Lula said he would lodge a complaint with the World Trade Organization about tariffs on Brazilian steel.
Frankly, I am very concerned about the behaviour of the US government with this imposition of taxes on all products and all countries. And I am concerned because at the heart of it, free trade is being undermined. I am concerned that multilateralism is being defeated, and I'm worried because the US president is not the sheriff of the world. He is simply the president of the United States.
US Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is planning to cut tens of thousands of jobs in the US Health Department. In what's being described as a major overhaul, the department says it's reducing bureaucratic sprawl and realigning its core mission. Combined with another 10,000 recent voluntary departures, the number of full-time employees in the department will be reduced from 82,000 to 62,000. Denmark's government has welcomed a decision to limit a controversial visit by the US Vice President to a military base in Greenland. J.D. Vance previously announced plans to turn self-governing Danish territory without an invitation, but speaking on Wednesday, President Donald Trump reiterated his claim that the territory should belong to the US.
We need Greenland for national security and international security. So I think we'll go as far as we have to go. We need Greenland, and the world needs us to have Greenland, including Denmark. Denmark has to have us have Greenland. And, we'll see what happens.
Rory Challenge reports from Nuuk.
Hello, this is DrPaulCottrell, and we are live streaming on Rumble, and we're live streaming on YouTube. I have simulcast for X Spaces, so if you have a question or a comment about the current events that are happening in the world, please ask for the mic on X Spaces and you can be on the show live. This is supposed to be an interactive show. If you have questions, put it in the chat box. But thank you for watching. We're going to be live streaming also on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. I'm setting that up. So before we begin, please help support my work by making sure that you subscribe to all the channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. It's really important that you subscribe to all those channels because I do get strikes on YouTube, so it prevents me sometimes to do live streams, so I have to switch to a different channel. So it's really important that you get the notifications and you subscribe to all 7 channels. That way I can reach my audience and give you my perspective on what's going on. The market is in turmoil today because of the tariffs that were announced last night. We're going to be talking about that. I'll do a market update here and give you my perspective. So please help support my work by going to my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee, or be a paid member to my Patreon channel. It's the people that donate and purchase the products and are paid members that allows me to do these videos for free. I have thousands of videos out there for free to inform you about what's going on with health and wellness, finance and economics, international policy, and what's going on with domestic news for the United States. So please help support my work. I give everything out for free. I don't put anything behind a paywall. All these videos that I do are for free for you. So please help support my work and get the products that I offer. I have a certain health protocol that I follow personally, and I have built up this protocol to share to you so you can purchase these different products and stack them in different ways to improve different systems of your body. So it's all about health and wellness in a holistic approach. It's about proper supplementation, proper diet, proper exercise. That means weight training, cardio, balancing exercises and stretching, proper sleep, mindfulness or spirituality, and learning new things, talking to people in the real world, getting that neuroplasticity improved. When you do this in a holistic fashion, then you're going to see huge improvements in slowing down your aging process and your body's healing. If someone says, just take this supplement and everything will be fine, they're wrong. If someone says, just focus on spirituality, they're wrong. If they say just weight train, they're wrong. If they say just do yoga, they're wrong. If they say just sleep, they're wrong. It's a holistic approach. So if you pay attention to what I have to say throughout this transmission, you're going to get healthy. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver soaps that I offer. You can get it in charcoal tea tree, in lemongrass, and also in peppermint, lavender. Get a couple bars for your household, or a few bars. Help support my work and help support your health. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off. Let's go to Bloomberg before we do that, I want to give a market update here. So we're already in the trading session for New York, and the dashboard is on the live stream on my website and also on YouTube. So the S&P 500 is trading at 5,717. The VIX is trading at 18.24. Euro USD is trading at 1.07. Oil is trading at $69.76 a barrel. BITO ETF for Bitcoin long is trading at 19.28, and the USD Japanese yen is trading at 150.94. Now, my analysis here is that the Euro USD has been in recent trading sessions trading at 148 handle. Now it's trading at a 150 handle. So the Japanese yen is weakening. That's a sign that markets are internationally not stressed. But because of the tariff from last night, we did get an elevated VIX in the early session for today, but then it has started to drop down. So equities early in the session for the opening in New York did drop, and now it's coming back up. Same problem with Bitcoin. Bitcoin seems to be trading roughly correlated with the equity market at this moment in time. So USD is strengthening in relative terms compared to previous sessions with the euro and with the yen. So at this moment in time, there is some stress because of tariffs, but it does seem to be mean reverting a bit throughout the intraday trading.
What I'm really taking away from the report is what we got that's new. And we got surging gross domestic income, 4.5% annualized growth in gross domestic income, major surge in corporate profits in the fourth quarter. Now, part of that is base effects. The third quarter was pretty dismal, but the surge in fourth quarter profits is important to keep in mind. Now, we had seen for a couple of years now this widening gap between GDP and GDI that made people look sort of cross-eyed at the GDP numbers, look at them with a lot of skepticism. When we see that gap closing, as we did in the fourth quarter, we can actually think, all right, maybe the economy is a bit more on solid footing. Now, as you mentioned, there are some headwinds mounting. Of course, we have tariff risk, we have every uncertainty index, economic uncertainty, policy uncertainty, spiking through the roof. At the same time, we have consumer sentiment that's tanking. So even as the economy is on solid footing through the fourth quarter, of course, there are some headwinds that a lot of folks are facing.
Stuart, clear this up for us. We were having a conversation earlier about how there's an element of PCE that also shows up in the GDP data, but it's different from the PCE that we're going to be getting tomorrow in terms of what we view as the Fed's preferred measure of inflation. But how is inflation looking in terms of the metrics that you saw from this GDP report?
Everything was fine, mostly for the fourth quarter. What's really becoming a bit of a problem is that goods inflation is really adding. It has been adding so far this year, typically because of both hedonic adjustments and because of improvements in efficiency and production. GDP is a drag on core inflation, goods are a drag on core inflation. We are seeing goods that are contributing positively to inflation so far to start this year, and that's probably only going to get worse. Beyond that, we're also seeing higher price resets in a lot of services industries, things like healthcare, hotels, and other services. So we are seeing mounting tailwinds for prices, and we do expect to see core inflation end the year higher than it started. And that's going to be a bit of a problem for folks that are betting on the Fed to cut. given the fact that tariffs are probably going to take a chunk out of GDP, possibly, even 20 basis points from full year GDP, based on what we just saw yesterday with the tariffs implemented on autos.
Have you guys at Bloomberg Economics taken your GDP numbers down?
We've taken our GDP numbers down pretty dramatically relative to full year growth 2024.
And when did you do this? You did this like the beginning of the year kind of thing?
Yeah, way early this
year. So, I mean,
and what are you adjusting most? What areas do you think will be the most hit by tariffs?
Fixed investment and spending. Okay. So that's in addition to what we expect the dynamics to be around the trade balance, right? So we also just this morning saw the advanced economic indicators, which include estimates for trade in goods. So folks had been expecting consumers and firms to load up on imports in January, a little bit less in February. The idea being that they're loading up now, building inventories in anticipation of tariffs that are coming down the road. The trade deficit is just getting blown out to start the year, and that's going to create material drag. And this is not just the story of gold imports. Of course, the gold story, I'm sure you guys have covered in depth, is a reason why we're not going to get negative growth to start the year. But that front loading of imports is going to take a chunk out of GDP.
Yeah, you mentioned gold. It's up another $30 today, $3,051 per ounce, up 1%. Just extraordinary. Stuart Paul, thank you so much. Always appreciate getting a few minutes of your time. Stuart Paul, he is U.S. economist for Bloomberg Economics, expert skier. So if you're up to Windham Mountain, be careful. He's out there watching. You don't want to get on his bad side. Let me tell you that right now. Hey, we actually got the stock market positive. S&P is actually up 7 points after a day of negative performance. This is Bloomberg.
All right, let's go to, I have, just to remind the audience, I do have X Spaces open, so if you have a question, please go to my X channel and ask the question. This is an interactive show. I want your questions. My whole show here is to give you my perspective and also to get your perspective. All right, it's interactive. Please ask questions if you would like. Okay, so what I'd like to do here is talk about this MS-13 gang leader captured on East Coast. But Fox News has like a 24-minute take on that, so I'm kind of looking for something a little bit smaller in the news clip here. When I find it, I will provide it. But here's 9. Here's a 9-minute one. So let's go there.
And buckle up, a Fox News alert. President Trump praising his team after the arrest of a top leader of MS-13.
Yeah, look at this. And is this live?
It was yesterday.
Oh, okay. We have exclusive coverage of the operation. Our cameras were rolling as AG Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel joined agents in the early morning takedown.
And David Spunt is live in Virginia, Manassas, Virginia, with all the details. Hi, David.
You were there.
Good morning to you. I was very early morning. This happened around 6 o'clock in the morning in Woodbridge, Virginia. A 24-year-old top MS-13 leader, actually the top leader on the East Coast, was taken down into custody by the FBI. This was a DOJ FBI operation together along with Virginia State Police, ICE, and other different agencies. We have some video of this operation going down. The FBI director and attorney general watched this on a monitor from off-site, but they were watching in real time in cameras that were planted in the area to see this person get taken down. As far as the name is concerned, we're not able to release the name right now until this person has their first appearance, but we're told this person is a 24-year-old male from El Salvador living here in a residential apartment complex in Woodbridge, Virginia. Got a knock on the door from SWAT teams early this morning, a little bit before 6 o'clock in the morning. He is now in custody. Here's some sound from our exclusive interview with the FBI director and attorney general.
First reaction is all of our law enforcement officers are safe. That was the number one thing. They're safe. They executed a clean, safe operation, and the bad guys in custody. And thanks to the FBI, we got one of the worst of MS-13 off the streets this morning.
We're able to be out here in force to show the American people to be here in person, that this means a lot to her and the mission. Safety is our primary concern of these communities, and we effectuated that today.
Separately, he's one of the top 3 leaders in the country. Again, remarkable as he's just 24 years old. There's a press conference that begins with the FBI Director Kash Patel, Attorney General Pam Bondi, and Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin coming up in just a few moments. We're told there's a heavy coordination between Virginia and the FBI and Department of Justice on this. Guys, back to you.
So, Dave, real quick, David. So typically when they do this raid, they have the principal target, and then there's other people that are along with the person. Was he the only person arrested, or were there other co-conspirators there at the time that they grabbed up as well?
Well, this was a residential neighborhood, Lawrence, and we're told there were other people in the house. We're told that there were children. There were other people in the house. They were just detained periodically for the time temporarily. He was the only target they were going after, and they have him in custody now.
David, how unique is it for the DOJ and the FBI director to be on location for something like this?
It is unique. It's something we haven't seen often. Typically, these go down all the time. People in uniform do these every single day. The FBI director and Attorney General said they wanted to get out there, be out there in person to see this and make sure they can thank these people in person and see what these operations are like in person, guys.
Can you tell me about him, David? What do we know about him? Leader, 24 years old, MS-13. Is there anything else you can tell us?
Well, right now we just know that he's the top leader on the East Coast of the United States. We know that he was not so much of a person that was dealing drugs or those kinds of things himself. We know more that he was kind of a ringleader, an operations leader, someone that was recruited by MS-13 several years ago. We're waiting for the actual criminal complaint. Hopefully going to find out some of those details here. But even some of the agents that were on the scene were remarking just his age, the fact that he is 24 years old and he's considered the top MS-13 person on the entire East Coast of the United States.
Unbelievable. And David, so you were there at like a staging area, a safe distance away from the apartment complex where this guy was, because apparently, it wasn't a bunch of guys in windbreakers going in. Everybody was armored up. They came in armored vehicles. There were SWAT teams. It's because they were expecting there could be trouble, right?
Oh, absolutely. They expected a fight. There were weapons in the house, we were told. We saw multiple different SWAT vehicles. I mean, it almost looked like something you would see at an army base. I mean, there was a heavy, heavy presence for this. And the FBI director, Attorney General, myself, and others, really other top DOJ leadership, the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, and Emil Bove, the Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General, also on scene watching from a distance, but they could watch it live on monitors and see. And the technology, we weren't allowed to show it on camera because of the nature of law enforcement, but it was incredible to see. I mean, very, very clear pictures and high-tech stuff. And they've been, surveilling this person for a while.
You were talking about how law enforcement, they do this every single day, raids every single day, which is true. But it is unusual to get someone this high up on the list, on the food chain. I mean, you got intelligence gathered. This is a massive operation.
It is a big one, and they've been looking after this person for a while. It's not clear how many times they previously wanted to do this operation, but it happened to work out today. But we know that there was surveillance on this individual for a while. And again, just the neighborhood that this person lived in was a run-of-the-mill residential neighborhood. People with Easter decorations outside. It was an apartment complex. Very nice neighborhood. And, they go in with these big tanks and SWAT teams this morning and get this guy out of there.
And I'm sure those residents are thinking, what the heck is going on here? And now everybody knows. There was a raid in Virginia, David, that took place between March 1st and March 13th, and 214 illegal immigrants were apprehended, took place in Virginia. So I'm wondering if somebody that was arrested between that time period talked and told the FBI about this guy, where he is and his location. When you were on the ground and talking to people that were involved in this arrest, did anybody say anything about that?
No, they didn't. They didn't bring that specifically up, but you're right. That did happen recently in Virginia. There's been a task force that the FBI has set up here in Virginia. So that's something new, and we expect the FBI director, to talk about that along with the AG, Attorney General, about the AG, today here at this news conference. But yes, there definitely has been a heightened increased work here in Virginia on this.
And David, while you were talking and reporting, the president posted on Truth Social Truth. He wrote, just captured a major leader of MS-13. Tom Homan is a superstar. Caroline Levitt, who's going to be with us very shortly, just tweeted out, top MS leader arrested in Virginia. This is what happens when you have competent federal leadership working with state and local law enforcement on the ground. Bravo, AG Gambani, Cash Patel, Governor Glenn Youngkin, and Tom Homan. So there's a list of people. Real quickly, I know the press conference is supposed to happen in about 5 or 6 minutes. Do we know who's going to be there?
Yeah, we know it's going to be the FBI Director, Cash Patel, Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, and Governor Glenn Youngkin. That's all we're aware of now. Obviously, some other officials with the local field offices of the FBI and whatnot will be there. But they're definitely happier that they have this person in custody now. And again, it's a little strange that I can't say this person's name, but we've been told we can't say this person's name as per the way things work in the court system. They need to wait for an initial appearance, but we know it's a 24-year-old man from El Salvador, the top leader of MS-13 on the East Coast, and one of 3 top leaders in the entire country.
Hey, some room on the top bunk. We got somebody else coming. Thanks so much.
David.
Thanks, David.
What an incredible win for the administration here. And the only one that is standing in the way are the Democrats.
It's about time that we have a president that's willing to go toe-to-toe with these criminals. MS-13 has been running roughshod for way too long because the Democratic Party was willing to allow it to happen. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great deodorants that I offer. I partnered up with Rainbow Herbals, and we've created these deodorants. It's a dual purpose. It'll help to detoxify your body because of the ingredients that are in them. And you use it as a deodorant. It's for males and females. Get a couple bars for your household. They're very high quality. They're made from essential oils from the Himalayas, all natural, no aluminum, no baking soda, very high quality ingredients. You can get it in citrus or in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. Get a couple bars for your household, help support my work, and help support your health and wellness. I believe in providing products that are dual purpose. That way, you're getting the most for your money. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the deodorants that I offer and help support my work and help support your health. Use discount 5 on any order and you get $5 off. All right, what I want to do now is take a look at maximum pressure. Bassett fires back at Schumer.
So Democrats seizing on Elon Musk's vow to audit the Social Security Administration to stop extreme fraud, like they're doing in every department across the spectrum. And they're claiming, though, Schumer's claiming that it's really just an effort to kill the program entirely.
Their goal is clear. Destroy Social Security from within. Make it so unworkable, so inefficient, that Donald Trump has the pretext to slash benefits, to kill it, and then privatize the program.
All right, let's start there with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Secretary, it's great to have you with us. Thank you very much for joining us today. Is that the goal, to kill Social Security from within, as we just heard from Senator Schumer?
Martha, first of all, thanks for having me. And clearly, no. Senator Schumer seems a little discombobulated these days. He did the right thing on passing the clean CR last week. He's taken a lot of shrapnel from his party. And extreme statements like this are not helpful for anyone. The American people, when they voted for President Trump, voted for accountability. And the whether it's Doge, whether it is our efforts of Treasury and the IRS, we are bringing accountability and efficiency in. And we want to make things better for the American people. We want to ensure that they get everything that they have paid in, and their benefits are there when they need them, as they need them. So, Senator Schumer is way off base here.
So, I mean, there's a difference, obviously, between eliminating waste and fraud, which you've spoken about a lot, and President Trump has spoken about a lot. And still being able to give people all of the benefits that they paid into. But one of the ideas that has come up, and President Bush brought it up a long time ago, W. Bush, that maybe the Social Security, the money in Social Security should have some of it invested in the market. That idea got lambasted. People said he was, trying to risk their money in the risky stock market. But is that an idea that resonates with you? And do you think it would help us remain solvent in Social Security?
Well, Martha, everything's easy in hindsight. And, I saw an analysis the other day that in 1968, if we put half the Social Security trust fund into equities, we'd have a 15 trillion surplus. Wow. But we didn't. We are where we are. We are not contemplating that. What we are contemplating is bringing the systems and the safeguards into the 2025, giving the American people accountability and ensuring the durability of the system, and to make sure that people's checks arrive on time. President Trump yesterday signed an executive order at Treasury mandating that we examine our payment system and try to get more people onto the electronic payment platform, because you may not know it, but there is a huge amount of theft of seniors' Social Security checks. So if they are able to get into an electronic payment system, then they are much more secure. They come earlier and they are guaranteed.
Yeah, I saw that, and I know you want to, move it over to a digital system that would be safer and that would guarantee that people's payments go through. It's probably going to be a big transition, and how long do you think that will take?
Well, for us, I don't think it's going to take that long. One of the things that I've been at my desk for 8 weeks, and one of the things that we've done is we make 1.5 billion payments a year. And we want to make sure that all of those are authorized. And one of the ways to do that, I came in and found out that a third of the payments that we sent out did not have proper identifiers on them to tie them back to an appropriation to a department. So we're just starting with the basics. And I'm very big on crawl, walk, run. And so we're going to stop crawling, we're going to get up, walk, have everything properly identified, and then we're going to fix these antiquated IT systems and make sure that they are safe and sound, and that people get their checks in a more robust basis.
I think it's about time. We see so much great technology in America, and so much of it is not used in our government. I think there's been a big wake-up call about that in the past couple of months, and certainly at Treasury with the things you've announced. I've heard you say a couple of times in interviews, Secretary, that one of the biggest surprises for you about the job has been the amount of foreign policy and national security that is involved in what falls under Treasury. I know that you were on this call that has gotten so much attention, this signal call about the Houthi strike. I just want to play this because it just broke a short time ago. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth spoke out about it just moments ago in Hawaii. Here's a quick bit of that.
Nobody's texting war plans. There's no units, no locations, no routes, no flight paths, no sources, no methods, no classified information.
So what's your reaction to all of this, and what do you think the lesson from it should be, Secretary?
Well, Martha, I'm gonna leave all that to the legal experts. I'll say one of the few advantages of being one of the older people in the cabinet is that I still like to pick up the phone and call people.
Well put. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot more of that going on and a lot more situation room meetings from what the president said yesterday on that. But we wanted to just give you an opportunity to respond to it. The other thing about foreign policy that has fallen into your area, President Trump said yesterday that he thinks that Russia may be dragging their feet on the ceasefire deals that have been discussed, both in his conversation with President Putin and then in this news yesterday about an agreement for a ceasefire in the Black Sea between Ukraine and Russia. And one of the things that has surfaced, Secretary Bassett, is that Russia would like to be put back in the SWIFT banking system, the international banking system, as part of that agreement. Is that something that would be palatable to the president or to you as part of those discussions?
Well, look, Martha, I think everything's on the table. And as you mentioned, part of the national security effort that Treasury does, it is through the financial operations, is through our sanctions. It is through sanctioned individuals, banks, or countries. We have a maximum pressure plan on Iran. We have a maximum pressure plan on the Houthis, and it will be determined by Russian leadership's next moves, whether the sanctions go up or down. And President Trump, I think, would not hesitate to raise the sanctions if it gives him a negotiating advantage. And there would be a long discussion about many things in terms of the proper way to bring Russia back into the international system. But I think this is premature to discuss the terms of a deal before we have a deal.
Okay. What about the mineral deal quickly, if you can? Is that still in the works with Ukraine? And there's also talk about us taking control over their nuclear facilities. I know you were involved in the mineral deal. Can you give us an update on that?
Sure. So I have nothing to do with energy or nuclear facilities. I will tell you that we have passed along a completed document for the economic partnership. It is currently being reviewed by Ukrainians, and we hope to go to full discussions and perhaps even get signatures next week. So the original document was a 4-page agreement. We took advantage of the gap in time to move to a completed agreement. So I am sure that we will move along and get this signed quickly.
So I understand that President Trump is about to, I think in about less than an hour, make a new...
I personally think that normalization economically with Russia should be on the table and provided to Russia only if there is a truce between Ukraine and Russia and hostilities cease. Not through the ceasefire. You know, the way this is going to happen is there's going to be a ceasefire over a certain duration and then a more longer lasting peace around that region. So during that ceasefire period, economic normalization with Russia should not take place. You got to give them an incentive to do a truce, end the war. Then economic normalization should begin.
Tariffs that have to do with cars. And I noticed that Larry Summers basically pushed back on your theory. He posted this on X, I believe it was earlier today, and it shows steel prices on the right-hand side of the screen here, which he said have risen and have added hundreds of dollars to American car purchases. So he says that your evaluation isn't correct, that China would end up paying. He says Americans have ended up paying in this. What do you say to that, Treasury Secretary?
Look, I'm not going to get in a back and forth with Professor Summers, and maybe Professor Summers should let the world know who his client list is and why he's talking about things like this, because he does have professional clients away from Harvard. But I would also add that I have 7 years of empirical data, and which showed that the China tariffs were not passed on to the American people. And I can tell you that China since then has only doubled down on becoming the exporter of last resort to the world. That is their business model. And if we put tariffs on them, they will continue producing. And we'll see, but I've got 7 years of empirical data, and he's saying that there's no economic theory. I'll match data against theory any day.
Okay, I've had a back and forth with him as well. So
That's
I
an
don't know if I
important.
recommend that.
That's an important statement that he's making, because I've seen it in economics, in finance, and in medicine. What happens is there is a canonical dogma on the theory of those disciplines, either the financial markets or the economics, or in, say, pathophysiology. All right, there's certain dogma or certain canonical quote truths that they think are happening. The problem comes in is that when you have a complex system, you can have things that weren't unexpected, that totally you did not see coming. All right. So with these chaotic kind of events, something positive may happen where, quote, the experts may think otherwise. A classic example is how the immune system works. It's very complex, lots of feedback loops. Our understanding of it is in its rudimentary phase. With finance and economics, there are lots of feedback loops. So when you have lots of positive and negative feedback loops in a social system, a biological system, even the cosmos, what you think may be the law of the discipline, or the theories, the proven theories, may actually be the opposite of what the actual outcome is, because of these unexpected events that take place. So his statement, taking a look at data versus theory, making judgment on theory is fine, but once you have empirical data to show you what's actually happening, it may be counter to the actual theory, all right, because of these feedback loops. That's the reason why you can have a theory of the immune system, but you got to take a look at the empirical evidence of the patient to determine the best course for the patient. So it's about data. So this also goes to health and wellness. Getting biometrics like blood, even getting really fancy with methylization of your DNA, reading, how much epigenetic changes have taken place, looking at telomere length, looking at other telemetry like heart, your EKG, calcium screenings. These are really bone density. All these are really important biomarkers to determine your overall health. All right. So there is a pathophysiology and a medical understanding of how the body works, but there are feedback loops that happen that may be unexpected. All right. Or they fall in a fat tail in terms of probability distribution. So getting the data for the patient is very important to determine course of action, not the theory, because data trumps theory. All right. And that's what Besant is stating with how the tariffs are. In theory, there should be some sort of harming of the market, the financial markets, but also harming of the economy, because goods, in theory, would be more expensive. But because there are other feedback loops and other levers of political persuasion, that may not necessarily be the case. And that's the reason why you got to take a look at the empirical evidence. Empirical evidence always trumps theory. Always. And the same thing with the human body. Empirical evidence trumps the canonical understanding of these complex systems. All right. Now, sometimes you have to couple it. You take a look at the data, the empirical data, and and your particular understanding of that system, biological system or sociological system, and you may have to make adjustments to the theory. Or the theory may actually explain the empirical evidence quite well. Just depends on the situation. So when you're talking about health and wellness, it's really important to understand your particular biochemistry. Your biochemistry is different than my biochemistry. They're similar because we're human, but your state of health is different than my state of health. And therefore your biochemistry is slightly different. You maybe have different concentration of certain enzymes than I have. Or, you maybe have a healthier organ system, but a more unhealthy organ system in another area compared to me. So your whole biochemistry is different with all these different feedback loops. So knowing where you are at, the empirical evidence, the biomarkers will allow you to adjust in a holistic approach to be able to stack certain supplements in a certain way to be able to fine tune what you need. All right. This is kind of like precision medicine. All right. But let's take it one step further. It's more like precision health and wellness. All right. Because it's a holistic approach. It's not this concept that I have is not a disease treatment concept. It's prevention and allowing your body to heal. That's the key to most chronic self-induced illnesses in the United States. So it's really important, get the data. What's your blood glucose levels? What's your cholesterol levels? What's your blood pressure? Cognitive function, bone density, liver enzyme function, kidney function. All right. Once you have a more mosaic of what's going on with your body, you'll be able to fine tune it. But if you're only looking very myopically at just kidney function while you have a heart problem, or a cardiovascular problem, you're not helping yourself. Or if you're only focused on bone density, but you have, let's say, cognitive decline or problems with gait issues. So it's a mosaic. You got to understand the mosaic and that empirical data. So let's take it to the economy. All right. The gurus out there, the ones that are coming from UPenn or coming from Chicago or even from Harvard. So you got the saltwater economists and you got the freshwater economists. They're going to be pushing for this concept that you're hurting free trade and it's going to be more expensive for everybody. All right. But when you listen to these economists, it's always short-term, and you should be always looking at this from a short-term perspective and a long-term perspective. And a lot of times when they're demonizing Trump's policies, they're only looking at the short term. They're not looking at the long term. And what I have noticed throughout the years of my life, especially in areas of the country that produce goods, manufacturing produces good paying middle-class jobs that are stable, that allows for people to have family creation and purchase homes. And there's an economic cluster that takes place because of those jobs. And those that you got tier 1 suppliers and you have tier 2 suppliers and you have peripheral industries and small businesses that are starting to form around that economic cluster. When those manufacturing jobs leave to another country, that economic cluster begins to shrink and becomes less viable. And therefore, the middle class gets squeezed, and the middle class in that area is less viable. So I don't hear economists saying that about the economic clustering. They'll just say your prices are going to go up. Maybe, but it might be short term. And the long term strategy here, which everyone wants, is to have a stable middle class that can have family creation and own homes and put their kids through college. So it's really important to not so focus on the theory, because there's too many feedback loops. And these theories only work in a certain range of parameters. And it's also based on probability. So you can have situations that are happening in the fat tail. All right. Just part of the distribution, not in the middle of the distribution. And when that happens, is that there are unexpected things that take place in that complex system. So it's important to think in those terms. And Bassan is seeing that. I mean, when you're a guy that has been in corporate, you see things, especially in finance, you see things at a very fast pace, and that you have a certain theory, but the theory breaks down. The thesis breaks down. Why? Because there's a changing of correlations. Like, for example, you take a look at the S&P 500 and Bitcoin. There's a high correlation between the two recently. As equities go down because of tariffs, so does Bitcoin. But as equities go up, Bitcoin goes up. All right. Now there is a mean reversion. When the market opened up, if you take a look at the dashboard, the S&P 500 went to a low intraday trading at 5,670. It's now trading at 5,724. So it mean reverted. It went up. But when the market opened, it went down. The same thing happened with Bitcoin, ETF, BITO. It fell down to 19.08, and it mean reverted with the market, and it's now trading at 19.39. All right. So the point I'm making here is that ETFs that are tied to Bitcoin are correlated with the equity market. But if you watch this day to day, you'll also notice that correlation can break down and then come back. So it depends on the time frame you're looking at and how you're averaging it out. All right. So someone would say, well, what's the trading theory in Bitcoin? Well, it depends on the time period you're looking at. All right. And what's going on? Part of it's regulatory. Part of it is the dollar strengthening or weakening. Part of it is the correlation to the equity market. All right. If Federal Reserve is tightening, in theory, Bitcoin should go down. If Federal Reserve is weakening, is reducing rates, Bitcoin should go up. All right. But there's these other variables that are involved that can change the actual price movement of Bitcoin and not follow the canonical understanding of the fundamentals of the economic trading thesis. All right. So people that have been in this situation for a long time, such as myself, you realize that the human body, economics, finance, and many systems that have positive and negative feedback loops, your understanding of the system will break down and then come back to the normal understanding. And there's these events that take place with these feedback loops that are somewhat unexpected. So when someone says for sure that tariffs going up are going to be inflationary across the board, we don't know that for sure. We do not know that because there's too many feedback loops in the economy. So we'll see. Now the theory suggests that it will be short term. The data showed that last time this happened with Trump's administration, it didn't happen, that we didn't have an inflationary problem. Now, maybe that's just a one data point look from the first term of Trump. All right, but let's see. If someone said, "What do you think is going to happen, Dr. Paul Cottrell, on this?" I think that there's going to be some goods that are going to be elevated in price, but it's not going to be inflationary across the board. And then there's also the issue with taxes. All All right. Tax cuts are coming at the end of the year. That's going to be very bullish for the economy, very bullish for the equity market. So there's going to be this wealth effect that takes place that could override any harmful short-term effects from certain goods that actually have elevated in price. So it's much more complex than to say, well, tariffs are bad for the economy. Not necessarily. You got to look at all the variables. And it's not just the economic variables, it's also the political, the international variables are involved here. So hopefully that gives you an insight of how I see this issue. And I think Bassent is also seeing this issue in a similar manner.
But it's good to have you with us today. Quick thought on inflation. We know that egg prices have come down, gas prices have come down, but there's still some consumer confidence wariness out there. What would you say about that, Secretary?
Look, the survey data tends to be very different from the actual data. That since January 2nd, since January 20th, prices have come down. Inflation is under control. Interest rates are down. Energy is down. And Martha, I'll tell you that when we execute on our tax plan, on the deregulation, and on the energy dominance, every one of those is disinflationary. Now, what we have, the prices got very elevated under the Biden administration. So
see what I mean? See what I mean? There's multiple variables, multiple levers that they're going to be pulling that is actually going to glide this for a better economy, a better middle class, a more prowess manufacturing base in the United States. He just said it. So why don't these famous economists state that? I know, because they get big dollar contracts to be consultants for multinational corporations, and multinational corporations hates tariffs. Like I said, tariffs hurt the big guy, not the middle class. The middle class, they may hurt in certain goods, but in the long run, when you're bringing back your manufacturing, you're actually strengthening the middle class. So people that have lots of money in the equity market that benefit from globalization, they're going to lose from tariffs. The people, these transnational capitalists and these corporations that have all their manufacturing overseas, they're going to hurt from tariffs because they have to move their manufacturing back here. And so they hire these economists from UPenn or Chicago, University of Chicago, or even Harvard. And they want them to get on the news and to demonize the tariffs. That's what's happening. There's a conflict of interest. And these economists make lots of money as consultants, the famous ones.
And we are trying to address that every day. But a good start to that will be getting energy prices down and getting interest rates down.
Okay, and we're watching some of that happen already. It takes time for these things to kick in, and we know that the president has said that there would be a little bit of discomfort along the way, and we're watching that play out. We look forward to hearing what he has to say about tariffs at 4 p.m. today. Treasury Secretary Bassent, thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to have you with us. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Martha.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Max 14. The Max 14 or the Max 35 is something that you should be taking every day. Take a teaspoon a day, swish it in your mouth, gargle with it, and swallow, all right? Gargle about 20 seconds or so. What will happen is you're improving your oral hygiene, you're improving your oral cavity and the oral pharynx, you're improving the epithelial lining and your mucosal barrier. That's going to improve your innate immune system. It's going to boost up your immune system, all right? Take it every day. Take Max 14 or Max 35. It's the first pillar of my core protocol. So go to the store, my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Max 14 or the Max 35. and take it every day. If you're not feeling well, take a tablespoon or 2 a day. You do it the same way. Swish it in your mouth, gargle, 20 seconds or so, and then swallow. Once you feel better, go back to your baseline dosage. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Max 14 or the Max 35. It's very important to take every day because it's going to help to boost up your immune system. I've been taking it for 5 years every day. Taking a good probiotic is really important. You can get it in VeggieCap version or the powdered version. Powdered version is going to allow you to mix it with your foods, like soft foods or filtered water. Some people make a smoothie. But for me, because I take so many different powders like the Gladiator, barley, and the collagen, and the probiotic, and the Boomer Boost, and lignans. So I take a lot of different powders for my protocol, daily protocol. It's just easier for me to do. So you can take the powdered version or the VeggieCap version. Getting a good probiotic is really important for your overall gut health, for your to bring down inflammation in the gut, to be able to absorb your nutrients, to have a better communication between your gut and your liver and your gut and your brain. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get these very high quality probiotics. Use discount 5. It's all caps, discount 5, and you get $5 off. All right, let's go to Al Jazeera. They're talking about Zelensky here.
Accounts
Right.
Western banks.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, sir. How serious is Russia about a peace deal? Because Ukraine has accused Russia of attaching last-minute conditions to that Black Sea deal that was agreed in Saudi Arabia. I refer there to those conditions of lifting sanctions, Russia demanding that certain bank sanctions be lifted. So how serious is Russia about a deal, a peace deal?
Russia absolutely sincere when Russia suggested to Ukraine to make a deal in April 22. Who was against this acceptance of declaration of Russian-Ukrainian? Great Britain. And Boris Johnson, who declared absolutely clear wording that there can be a Russian-Ukrainian deal before defeating Russian military forces on the battlefield.
Right, but going back to where we are at the moment, now, 2025, we have this deal, this Black Sea maritime peace deal, which was agreed apparently in Saudi Arabia. What's holding that deal up?
I don't think, I don't consider that this negotiation will be ended by the signing any agreement on the Black Sea, because Russian demand was full control for all ships free of cargo going to Ukrainian ports, Odessa, Nikolaev, Izmail. But it is not acceptable for Ukrainians and for European partners of Ukraine, because they are sending weapon and military ammunition to Ukrainian army.
I got parts in to fix this. Big thanks to FridayParts.com. They sent me all of the top rollers and the bottom rollers that I need to get this machine back in operation. Big thanks to FridayParts.com.
In Bulgaria, connected with dispatching all this military equipment to Ukraine, and to lose all these sources of business, they are not ready. So there are quite a lot of factors that are against giving Russia and the United States an agreement for deal on the subject of Black Sea, of the subject of military actions against energy resources in Ukraine and in Russia. So 2 points were on the agenda, the agenda, when we began the discussion in Riyadh.
Okay.
So now I don't see any move, any progress in this negotiation because it is not comfortable demands from Russia to control all ships going to Ukraine.
Okay.
Free of cargo.
All right. Thank you for your time. You have made your point. Thank you so much for your time. Vyacheslav Matuzov, political analyst and former Russian diplomat, speaking to us there from Moscow. Thank you. Israeli forces have carried out several attacks across Gaza, killing at least 22 Palestinians since dawn.
All right, I want to go to...
Airstrikes have targeted displaced people, many of whom have been living in tents.
I want to go to Fox Business about China.
Welcome back. The Commerce Department adding over 50 Chinese companies to its export blacklist for helping to develop advanced AI supercomputers and chips for military purposes. Joining me now is the Gatestone Institute Senior Fellow. He is the author of Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. Gordon Chang back with me. Gordon, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. What do you see as the impact of adding these Chinese companies to the export blacklist?
Well, it's a good move because it shows that the Trump administration is taking this AI issue seriously. Yeah. But we got to remember that we keep on adding Chinese companies to the blacklist, the entity list of the Commerce Department. But the point is that China just uses then other companies to accomplish what it wants, which is to gather up U.S. chips or U.S. technology. We've got to understand that all Chinese companies are a threat. Remember, Xi Jinping has this doctrine of military-civil fusion. The Communist Party itself believes that no entity, no person in China can disobey a Communist Party order. So we just should understand the fundamental nature of the Chinese system and put every Chinese party on the entity list.
So what would be the most important move for the administration in facing off this threat? We've talked a lot about the Chinese stocks traded on U.S. exchanges. Would they go that far to remove those stocks from U.S. exchanges to stop the American public from investing in companies that may be working against the United States?
Well, the Trump administration should do that, and as you pointed out in your documentaries, Underwriting the Enemy, we are funding China's assault on our society. We're doing that with trade, of course, but we're also doing it with investment, and we're allowing Chinese companies to list. Right now, we have this boom in the Chinese stock market, which is bouncing off a very low bottom. But nonetheless, Wall Street loves it, and they're trying to sell China to the American public again. As Roger Robbins has said, we're funding our own demise, and this has got to stop.
Yeah, it's pretty extraordinary. We see it so clearly, and yet that is a very significant lever to push for the administration. So we're watching that. Hong Kong-based company CK Hutchison planning to sell the 43 ports, including 2 near the Panama Canal, to a BlackRock-led U.S. investment group. This $23 billion deal moving forward, despite anger apparently from Beijing and from Xi Jinping. The Trump administration is seeking to regain control of the canal and curb Chinese influence in South America. CIA Director John Ratcliffe testified about it yesterday. Listen to this.
Director Ratcliffe, China's influence on the Panama Canal has increased since 2017. Panama became the first Latin American country to sign on to China's Belt and Road Initiative. Can you talk about not just China embedding itself into the various canal-related sectors and operations, but what other areas in Central and South America have China and others increased their presence?
The PRC throughout Central and South America continues to attempt to use its soft power to gain a foothold. They use direct aid to countries that need it. They also provide funding to universities to get a foothold to create influence. You've seen the diplomatic efforts of the administration to address that and push back on PRC ownership of the canal locks. But that ties into what the IC is doing.
Gordon, this is a very well methodical plan by China to intercept very important shipping lanes. Your reaction to all of this?
Well, the interesting thing is that Beijing is now throwing a fit. Yesterday was the third time that the central government's two main offices in Hong Kong reposted an article from Daogong Bao, the major pro-Chinese newspaper in Hong Kong. Those articles actually criticized Hutchison for selling the ports to BlackRock, and it did so in very corrosive terms, saying that any company that undermined China's national security was destroying its own foundations. And yet, Hutchison is going forward with this sale, which suggests that companies in Hong Kong are defying the Beijing central government, which is just inconceivable, or at least it would have been inconceivable a year ago. So I don't know what's going on here, but the point is that companies in Hong Kong are now starting to see that China is not as important to them as they once were. Otherwise, Hutchison would obey Beijing and would not be selling these two ports to BlackRock.
Well, this sounds like a good development. I mean, Li Ka-shing, the head of CK Hutchison, you would think would bow to Xi Jinping. He's not.
No, he's not. Interesting thing is that one of Li Ka-shing's sons, Richard Li, has been summoned to Beijing to go to the China Development Forum. And Beijing is going to put a lot of pressure on him there. And yet we're going to see how this works out. But Richard Li is not somebody who is going to say no to Beijing. But if he does, that signals a very important shift in the way that businesses around the world are starting to look at China.
Yeah, I met Li Ka-shing when I went to Hong Kong many, many years ago, and he certainly was a major leader then. He remains with that leadership position in Hong Kong. I think it's just extraordinary that you have this kind of resistance coming out of Hong Kong after they, swept in there and threw all the freedom fighters in jail, including Jimmy Lai a couple of years ago. So we'll keep a focus on that, Gordon. That's a very important point that you make. You have an op-ed in The Hill about how President Trump may be pushing South Africa closer to China, though, and that it might not matter in the long run. Tell us why.
Well, first of all, South Africa is already in China's camp. Second of all, China is at high tide in Africa. We're seeing this with its signature Belt and Road projects are failing, and Beijing is not stepping up to put more money in them. And we're also seeing countries in Africa start to look at China in a very different light because China's commitments to them have not been fulfilled over the last couple of years. Also, the other thing is that countries in Africa need the United States. They're looking for alternatives to China, and we're seeing countries spend a lot more time talking to New Delhi and Washington. So even South Africa, which is a very pro-China country, is now wanting a trade deal with President Trump. And we see President Ramaphosa is actually trying to tamp down anti-American sentiment in South Africa. So that's a very good development. And here again, you see China's great friends are now starting to abandon Beijing, something that we would not have thought of a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and that's, of course, the strategy of the CCP to get into Africa and start taking over to control those minerals, rich in minerals, as well as
what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Cash Jordan here. But let me just plug my lozenges and drops really quickly. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great structural nanosilver lozenges and drops that I offer. We're going into the allergy season. It's really important to mitigate that irritation that you might get at work or at home, wherever. Just be prepared. You want to mitigate it right away. So I have it in blueberry for the drops. Each drop bag has 100 drops in them. Cherry flavor, and also in honey and lemon. Very high quality drops made from structural nanosilver. I also have lozenges, and the lozenges are larger. You get 21 in each bag, and you can get it in Manuka honey or in elderberry zinc. Get a few bags for your household, have them at work, have them at home, have them in your backpack or your bag, just in case you need them, all right? The moment you have that irritation, take them right away. Very important. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. All the links are in the description of this video and all my videos. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off. So let's go to Cash Jordan here. He just released a new...
And keep in mind, this Roosevelt Hotel that's so notorious, it is a base of operations for Tren de Aranda, which is a vicious gang. It is unacceptable that we have these sanctuary city policies. I know, Secretary.
So this building behind me, the Roosevelt Hotel, it's a New York City shelter, but it's also the base of operations for one of the most dangerous gangs in the entire world. And while the Trump administration does everything it can to get the defiant criminals living in places like this out of our country, New York City is circling its wagons, working overtime to protect federal fugitives. But in doing so, it's putting our entire country in grave danger.
New York City is currently housing more than 40,000 migrants, but the city has spent nearly $7 billion housing and feeding those who have arrived in the city over the last almost 3 years.
Some of the gang members get there, and they'll take the other teenagers who are also there, and they'll convert them, saying, listen, you're not doing anything, you can't work. So they become TDA right here in New York City in America.
We are not going to allow New York State to be complicit in the deportation dragnet because they don't like people who don't look like them, who don't speak the language like them, or who they believe are the root cause of all the problems and ills in this world.
Releasing a public safety threat back in the public is just stupid.
Now, Republicans right now are pushing for 2 bills. One would repeal the state's green light law, which allows undocumented immigrants to get driver's licenses, and the other bill, which is called Lakin's Law, which would allow for law enforcement officers to notify ICE when they arrest an undocumented immigrant. Now, both bills have almost no shot at passing the Democrat-controlled Senate and Assembly.
So an intense crackdown on illegal immigration is headed to America's largest sanctuary city, New York. But what none of the radicals here defying ICE will admit is that by standing against America's immigration laws, they're not making things any safer for immigrant communities. In fact, the exact opposite of that is happening. Because the only immigrant community benefiting from laws that keep police at bay and help federal fugitives are the 60,000 illegal New York City residents who've been charged for the crime. And our sanctuary city policies just make all of our law-abiding communities worse off, as these compassionate laws just empower criminals who've come here to prey upon the rest of us. And these gang members, they get to do that from city-run asylum shelters like this, and our elected criminal sympathizing leaders, they do everything they can to keep things that way. With one of New York City's top mayoral hopefuls screaming at the border czar and proudly posting the footage of that incident to his campaign page, which will surely help donations roll in from anti-Trump progressives who don't understand the massive problems they're causing by backing a system that harbors dangerous fugitives who know their time is running out. Which brings us to the real reason a massive immigration battle is unfolding right here, and why it's so important that America get these gang members and criminals out of our country for good. By the way, if New York City wins this, law-abiding Americans everywhere, including here, will lose. Because the only reason leaders in our city are defending criminals hiding from the federal government in publicly funded shelters is because they support the ultimate goal of keeping America's border wide open, using sanctuary cities as a magnet for illegal immigration. Because as long as cities like New York are allowed to harbor an estimated 400,000 illegal residents, the gangs and cartels profiting from the exploitation of those residents and the illegal underground economy they create will keep bringing the wrong people here. And as you're about to see, defiant, radical voices here want that to happen, even if it means the very immigrant communities these protesters say they support are going to be worse off because of it. So this here hotel, it's full of gang members. The world knows it. The parents of the children who live in this place don't want gang members near their kids. And some of our city leaders want to keep things this way, even though this place has been used as a base of operations for these criminals to destroy our city from within.
The feds are opening up a criminal investigation into New York City's migrant hotels. We got a lot, even demanding staff turn in names of illegals that they were housing.
And keep in mind, this Roosevelt Hotel that's so notorious, It is a base of operations for Tren de Aragón, which is a vicious gang. It's also
So I don't think people understand what a big deal this is. This hotel, it's not just a hotel where some asylum seekers stay. No, it's the welcome center for every single new arrival in New York City. If the city's seen 200,000 people flow through its shelter system, they've all come through this place. And having gang members here is a massive problem because many of the folks who enter our country illegally, they do so with the help of gang members and cartels who get them across the southern border for fees, which now are apparently over $10,000. And people, they can't afford that. But when they come across the border, they're given the cartel's wiring information and they're expected to send that money back. When you've got gang members in a place like this, it means that these people who are exploited before they enter our country are then exploited again once they're here by criminals who are traffickers and just want to make the most money that they possibly can using the people around them as human capital for their criminal endeavors. And even though the NYPD's own statistics prove this is happening as a sanctuary city, nobody here is allowed to do anything about it.
Some of the gang members get there, and they'll take the other teenagers who are also there, and they'll convert them, say, listen, you're not doing anything, you can't work, we're still waiting to go to school. So they become TDA right here in New York City in America. And you talk about this, 75% of the Midtown Manhattan arrests are illegal immigrants. That according to the
So 75% of the arrests in the area of town where this building is located are directly tied to our city's harboring of federal fugitives. And as you just heard, being in these shelters allows gang members to easily find and recruit new members who become gang members after they get into our country, which reveals how bad our vetting has been at the southern border. People enter the country, they're not part of a gang, and then they get here, and now all of a sudden they are. And then they turn around and use the very hotel rooms they're given for free to plan and commit crime all over town. And how do we know this is happening? Well, last summer when there was a robbery spree in Central Park, the people who were on the wanted posters for stealing folks' cell phones with weapons, they were traced back to this very building. Isn't that wild? And the reason the federal government wants to know who's living in these places is so that they can find out who and where the gang members are. And although that's the obvious first step in defeating these gang members and getting them out of our country, progressive leaders in this city are very much against anything like that taking place.
Tom Homan took his campaign to end New York City's sanctuary city laws in the state capitol. The Republican press conference was apparently too much for Queens Assemblywoman Zora Mandani, who had to be held back by state police. This video put out by Mandani's mayoral campaign.
So the guy here screaming at the border czar, he's running for mayor, and believe it or not, he's a contender who has a message that resounds with a lot of New Yorkers who somehow believe that when the president or border czar say they want to get dangerous gang members out of our country, they mean something other than that. Even though we know exactly where the criminals are living and where their base of gang operations is here. We've even got pictures of them, which they take on the street directly in front of this facility, flashing gang signs at the camera. And even though they're allegedly protesting in the name of rights for immigrants, let's think about this logically. If you've got gang members who are human traffickers living in a shelter surrounded by women and children, who's benefiting from that situation? Especially when trafficking has become such a big problem in this city that now at the bus terminal, where many asylum seekers first arrive, you'll see signs talking about trafficking and how to spot it and how to report it. Why would those signs be there if people weren't being exploited all over this place? But it gets even worse because an investigation by the New York Post revealed that the gang members inside this place got weapons in here through DoorDash delivery bags, which means we don't just have gang members living in here who might be exploiting people. We've got verified gang members living here, some of whom are armed in an area of town where it says no weapons allowed on signs that you'll see on street corners like the one just a couple of blocks away from here in Times Square.
Tom Homan was up in Albany yesterday saying that he will flood the city with ICE agents if Democrats don't do more to crack down on illegal immigration. Immigration advocates are now calling on Adams to step up and defend migrants living in the city.
We really hope that he would reassure New Yorkers and our clients that they will be safe in shelter and that the city will stand up.
I don't understand what these people want. If somebody's a violent, dangerous gang member, why would we want the mayor to come out and tell that person that the city's going to protect them and that they should feel free to roam the town and do what they please, which is what they are doing. Why would we want that? But here's what's really going on. These activists are in a tough spot because the truth of the matter is that they hate President Trump and they're still upset that he's president. Remember, these activists were also the very people telling us in 2023 that the asylum crisis was going to be the best thing to happen to the city. And then we find out that 75% of the arrests near this place are committed by criminals who might be living in this very same facility. On top of that, having a massive population of illegal residents in your city just empowers these very same criminals who are always looking for folks who have to stay off the government's radar, who they can then turn around and threaten and exploit, because these aren't people who are free. These aren't people who can just work at any job they want or live however they want. No, they have to subject themselves to the criminal underworld to live illegally in this city, and that's something none of our leaders want to admit. But sadly, as you're about to see, even though everyone can see this is happening, our leaders are either blinded to this reality by their hatred of the president, or they know this is happening, but they write it off because they don't live in a neighborhood where any of this is taking place. And the disturbing thing about this is that regardless of what these folks believe, their goal is to keep it this way. So there's an entire fleet of what look like police vehicles littering the street in front of this very same hotel where we know gang members are living, which is completely bizarre because it reveals that the police know exactly what's going on in our city, but as a sanctuary city, they're not allowed to cooperate with the federal government one bit, which is why the border czar now says that he's going to have to flood this place with even more ICE agents because he's not getting any cooperation and he's on a mission to make America and the residents of this city safer. But while this is happening, pro-safety laws that some of our elected officials have put forth have absolutely no chance of getting through.
Now, Republicans right now are pushing for two bills. One would repeal the state's green light law, which allows undocumented immigrants to get driver's licenses, and the other bill, which is called Lakin's Law, which would allow for law enforcement officers to notify ICE when they arrest an undocumented.
Right, so it looks like this sanctuary city is going to keep doing two things: issuing driver's licenses to potential gang members and hiding fugitives from the federal government after our police make an arrest. These are two of the dumbest possible things any place could do from a law and order perspective, that's for sure. Because all they do is help gang members and those who the federal government is looking for hide easily in plain sight. For example, if federal authorities conduct some sort of operation and they ask people for identification, they're going to give them New York State issued driver's licenses. Licenses which they may have illegally obtained with fraudulent information. Look at what you can use to get a license in this city. They'll accept your foreign high school report card, and they'll even accept a foreign driver's license which has been expired for 2 years. Obviously, this is a massive problem from a public safety perspective, and you'd be stupid if you thought criminals were going to find out this is how things operate here and we're going to come here because of it, which is exactly what they're doing.
Meanwhile, Democrats push back on Homan's visit to the state capitol, holding a press conference vowing to continue to defend immigrants.
But if Mr. Holman wants to be so concerned about public safety and about criminals, he should start with the repeat offender living in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
So according to the political party that runs this city, the only criminal the border czar should be worried about is the one who lives in the White House, President Trump. Are you kidding me? What about the criminals on wanted posters outside of our asylum shelters? How come nobody's focused on them? The only way to believe this stuff and talk this way is if you live in an alternate reality where you think that every crime that is reported by the police is somehow misinformation if it in any way hampers what's on your agenda. And don't kid yourself, that agenda is not about protecting immigrant communities. No, instead it's about open borders, and the language used to further that agenda is all about separating families and tearing lives apart, and how horrible this is that gang members who live in a hotel like this might not be able to do so anymore.
This, in fact, I noticed recently the news article saying Tom Homan suggesting family detention again, family residential centers, and I am. Family residential centers are the opposite of family separation. Why are we even talking about family residential centers? Because this administration, President Trump, wants to make sure these children aren't victims of trafficking. He wants to make sure this family is really a family. This is about saving children.
Okay, so remember how earlier we talked about trafficking and how it's a massive problem in New York City and how it's something these gangs specialize in? Well, the border czar knows this, and that's why he's operating family detention centers. He wants to figure out if the people who say they're family really are, or if they're prisoners of some gang and they're being exploited. And the shocking thing about the Roosevelt Hotel is it's a facility specifically reserved for families. But if gang members are co-opting this requirement and getting into places like this that do not kick people out, with some families having stayed here for over a year, that's a big problem. That gives them a permanent base of operations where they can prey upon the rest of the city. And part of the border czar's job is to figure out if these are real families or fake families. And look, if the government here is putting up signs in the bus terminal telling everyone that trafficking is a big problem here, you know it was a big problem here way before that sign ever showed up.
Border numbers are down 97%. That's the most secure border we ever had because of this president's bold actions, right? He was a game changer. ICE arrest, I looked this morning, they just below 30,000. More than twice a minute Biden.
So the reason the border czar is so hated is because he understands that an open border that allows anybody to come into our country and wind up in places like this is only going to empower criminals, which is exactly what's happening. But if you're in the open borders crowd, anything that might shut the border down, even if it's done to defeat gangs and criminals, is something you're not going to be in favor of. Well, what do you think? Is that wrong somehow? Are gang members being taken out of places like this? Is that going to tear families apart? Are these even real families? Or are these gang members a lot smarter than the folks who were letting them into the country without asking any questions? Let me know. Thank you so much. See you in the next video. All righty. Well, New York's got a lot of problems, especially with illegal immigration and just how the administration, the Democratic Party within New York City allows these things to happen. Now, a big part, and I've mentioned this in other videos, a big part of why they're having this happen is that there is a flight out of the city, all right? Population is declining over time. So it's putting stress in terms of funding on school districts because the pupils, the number of children that are in the public school system is declining. So they get their funding by head count, independent on if they're legal citizens or illegal aliens. So they just want the head count to get the funds. In addition, there are people that are moving out of New York State. So the Democratic Party is worried about losing congressional seats because it's based on population of the state. So if you can get lots of illegal immigrants into the state and eventually get amnesty, then what will happen is that you've solved the population decline in the state of New York. So there is a complex reason why they're doing this. All right, with that said, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the magnesium and zinc. This is a great supplement to boost up your immune system, and also the vitamin C plus magnesium. You can stack these together, take them, drink it with filtered water because they're water soluble, boost up that immune system. Vitamin C also helps with your skin, especially when you take collagen. Multivitamin. This multivitamin that I have on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, is easy to digest. You need a good multivitamin to have the proper vitamins and minerals to have the enzymatic activity running properly in the cell. Vitamins and minerals are cofactors for enzymes, and they'll attach to the enzyme and change the conformation, the three-dimensional structure, and allow that enzyme to perform better. If you're in low concentrations of certain minerals or certain vitamins, your enzymatic activity isn't going to perform as well. So it's really important to start a baseline with a probiotic and a multivitamin for your health protocol. So this multivitamin is going to give you what you need to have the proper enzymatic activity, and then you build on top of this.
based on some of the other things that I've mentioned, like the Max 35 or Max 14 or the C60 or lignans and turmeric or D3 and K2. So you can build on top of this, right? So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You should be taking a multivitamin every day. This is a very high quality multivitamin that's easy to digest. So a great stack to get on your journey of health and wellness. And remember, it's a holistic approach. It's not just supplementation. It's proper diet, exercise, proper sleep, mindfulness. Is to get the multivitamin and also stack it with the magnesium and zinc and the vitamin C and magnesium to boost up your immune system. So this is a great way, great start for your journey to get healthy in 2025. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get this stack or some of the other stacks that I've been talking about throughout this transmission. Use discount 5, all caps, discount the number 5, and you get $5 off. I also have anti-aging boxes and longevity boxes that are designed to be at a discount. And you can apply the discount 5 on top of that instead of just purchasing the individual products. So if you want something that's in an anti-aging box or a longevity box that's on my website, it behooves you to actually purchase the longevity box or anti-aging box because it's cheaper than to purchase the individual items on my store. All right. So I'm trying to find different price points and get these stacks in your hands so you can get healthy. It works. You just have to follow my directions on this. And, if you do the proper supplementation on a regular basis, the proper diet, the exercise, the stretching, the cardio, the weight training, the balancing exercises, mindfulness, proper sleep. When you do this in a holistic fashion, you're going to get healthy. You're going to slow down the aging process and boost up your immune system. Okay. With that, I want to go to probably Bloomberg. Yeah, I think what we're going to do is let's go to RFK Jr. announces major consolidation at HHS, slashes. This is from the New York Post, 20,000 staff. I thought it was 10,000 staff, but let's listen in here.
The most part with competent. Hey, everybody, I'd like to share with you a paradox that I've encountered here in Washington, D.C. as the new secretary of HHS. Our department is filled for the most part with competent, conscientious public servants, and yet the agency has been inefficient as a whole. Over the past 4 years during the Biden administration, HHS's budget increased by 38%, and its staffing increased by 17%, but all that money has failed to improve the health of Americans. In fact, the rate of chronic disease and cancer increased dramatically as our department has grown. Our lifespan has dropped, so Americans now live 6 years shorter than Europeans. We have the sickest nation in the world, and we have the highest rate of chronic disease. The U.S. ranks last among 40 developed nations.
And a big part of that is our lifestyle, the foods that we eat. So stay away from processed foods. Filter your water. Detoxify your body. Do the proper supplementation. Proper diet. Exercise. And when I say exercise, cardio, weight training, balancing, and stretching, all 4 of those are very important. They do positive things for your body. Doing these different modalities of exercise are going to do positive things for your body. All right. So it's really important. If you just weight training, that's not the right way to do it. If you're just doing cardio, that's not the right way to do it. If you're just balancing exercises like yoga, that's not the right way to do it. All right. So you got to do all 4 modalities. Proper sleep to help with consolidating memory and to detoxify your central nervous system. Learning new things, so you're getting that positive neuroplasticity. Those are all really important aspects of this holistic approach. All right. most chronic diseases in the United States is self-induced based on lifestyle. And if you look in the mirror and say, hey, you want a better you can do it if you follow these types of protocols. But a lot of Americans are too lazy or don't want they don't want to pay attention. They just want the bread and circus. But guess what? When you have that heart attack and you're going to the ER, right? And your life is flashing before your eyes, you're going to wish that maybe, you listen to people like myself giving advice about how to improve your health and wellness.
Now, we spend 2 to 3 times more per capita than those nations. As secretary, I now understand why all this money is not improving our health. HHS is a sprawling bureaucracy that encompasses literally hundreds of departments, committees, and other offices. You know how bureaucracies work. Every time a new issue arises, they tack on another committee. This leads to tremendous waste and duplication, and worst of all, a loss of any unified sense of mission. The resulting pandemonium has injured American health and damaged department morale. When I arrived, I found that over half of our employees don't even come to work. HHS has more than 100 communications offices and more than 40 IT departments and dozens of procurement offices and 9 HR departments. In many cases, they don't even talk to each other. They're mainly operating in silos. Sometimes these sub-agencies work at cross purposes with each other. Some of these little fiefdoms, for example, are so insulated and territorial that they actually hoard our patient medical data and sell it for profit to each other. Instead of remedying the chronic disease crisis, perverse incentives have administrators checking boxes and grading their own homework while public health declines. A few isolated divisions are neglecting public health altogether and seem only accountable to the industries that they're supposed to be regulating. In one case, defiant bureaucrats impeded the secretary's office from accessing the closely guarded databases that might reveal the dangers of certain drugs and medical interventions. I have some good news, though. As part of President Trump's DOGE workforce reduction initiative, we're going to streamline HHS to make our agency more efficient and more effective. We're going to imbue the agency with a clear sense of mission to radically improve the health of Americans and to improve agency morale. We're going to eliminate an entire alphabet soup of departments and agencies while preserving their core functions by merging them into a new organization called the Administration for a Healthy America, or AHA. We have 2 goals. The first is obvious, to save the taxpayer money by making our department more efficient. And the second is to radically improve our quality of service. I want to promise you now that we're going to do more with less. No American is going to be left behind. Our key services delivered through Medicare and Medicaid, the FDA and CDC, and other agencies will enter a new era of responsiveness and a new era of effectiveness. We're going to consolidate all of these departments and make them accountable to you, the American taxpayer, and the American patient. These goals will honor the aspirations of the vast majority of existing HHS employees who actually yearn to make America healthy. 28 great divisions will become 15. The entire federal workforce is downsizing now, so this will be a painful period for HHS as we downsize from 82,000 full-time employees to around 62,000. We're keenly focused on paring away excess administrators while increasing the number of scientists and frontline health providers so that we can do a better job for the American people. We're going to streamline our agency and eliminate the redundancies and invite everyone to align behind a simple, bold mission. I want every HHS employee to wake up every morning asking themselves, what can I do to restore American health today? I want to empower everyone in the HHS family to have a sense of purpose and pride and a sense of personal agency and responsibility to this larger goal. We're going to save taxpayers nearly $2 billion a year, and we're going to return HHS to its original commitment to public health and gold standard science. I want this agency to be once again a revered scientific institution that once made HHS the envy of the world. I want everyone who works here to be proud of this agency, to be proud of the work, to feel a renewed inspiration and their own sense of responsibility for our success in restoring America to good health. Streamlining HHS is part of a shift to new priorities, especially ending the chronic disease epidemic with clean water, safe food, effective medicine, good science, radical transparency, and a healthy environment. I think most Americans would agree with me that throwing more money at healthcare isn't going to solve the problem, or it would have solved it already. Obviously, what we've been doing hasn't worked. That's why we're making this dramatic overhaul. But the real overhaul is even bigger. The real overhaul is improving the health of the entire nation to make America healthy again.
I hope he's successful with it because I think his heart's in the right spot. I know that if Americans do get healthy by taking responsibility for their decisions, their lifestyle decisions, most of the chronic disease that's in the United States will diminish. We're talking about heart disease will be radically diminished. You're talking about diabetes being radically diminished. And when you lower the burden of chronic disease on the healthcare system, there's going to be more time for healthcare workers to focus on the other issues that patients may have. On top of that, you're going to have less costs in billing for Medicare and Medicaid. That means there's going to be savings. The amount of money that Americans pay per year in total would drastically go down if we reduce the obesity, the diabetes, the heart disease that is running rampant in this country. So if we want to save hundreds of billions of dollars in healthcare costs, this is how you do it. You got to take charge of your life, and at the aggregate level, people getting healthy will lower the actual healthcare cost. Healthcare costs will balloon out if people don't take responsibility. Now, some people don't know how to do it, and that's what I try to do on each of my episodes. I try to explain on how to stack these supplements, look at it from a holistic perspective so you can get healthy. All right, with that said, let's go to another video. All right, this is CNN explaining to Americans what the auto tariff will do.
Leaders of some of America's biggest trading partners, said another way, some of America's closest allies, are reacting and preparing to retaliate this morning now after President Trump announced 25% tariffs coming next week on all cars shipped to the United States. CNN's Vanessa Yurkevich joining us right now. And this applies to cars and car parts, which is an important aspect of this. What are you learning?
It's absolutely critical because every car maker is going to be impacted, and every consumer.
That's a much better way of even saying it. Exactly.
And every consumer who's eventually going to be looking for a new car will be impacted by this 25% tariff on all foreign imports of cars and parts. Just look at the amount of car makers that are going to be impacted. You see foreign car makers, domestic car makers, and they're all on the same screen together because many of the foreign car makers actually have assembly plants right here in the U.S. However, they use foreign car parts. Of all the 10.4 million cars produced and assembled here in the U.S., 50% were made with foreign car parts and 50% with American car parts. That's in one vehicle. And that's critical because that's where you're going to start seeing these taxes on these car parts. We've been hearing from leaders around the world reacting to this and sort of foreshadowing what the retaliation might look like. Take a listen to Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, and what he said just yesterday.
This is a direct attack, to be clear, a direct attack
We'll defend our workers. We'll defend our companies. We'll defend our country. And we'll defend it together.
He's going to defend Canada. He's going to defend his workers. What he basically means is he's going to maintain the tariff disparity. All right. Remember what Trump is doing. Trump is saying you have unfair trade that's going on. It's not reciprocal. And that you're placing tariffs on goods so American goods can't be sold into your country. In this case, we're talking about Canada. So the baseline is that Canada started this. Not that the United States started it. There isn't free trade. There's not even fair trade with Canada. The issue that we have here is that there are goods and services that they're tariffed to protect their industries in their country. Well, then, fine. The United States should do the same to Canada. So who really started this? Was it the United States or was it Canada? So they just want to defend the status quo, unfair trade practices. That's what he's saying. But they want to spin it because they represent the CNN and these mainstream media and these politicians. He used to run the Bank of England, all right, Carney. He also went to Harvard. He was on I believe, either the board of, I think he was on the board of overseers that he had to step down once he decided to, to become Prime Minister of Canada, all right? So he's a well-heeled individual that represents globalization. To think he doesn't represent globalization, you're not paying attention. So is he really defending the country or is he defending globalization? Is he defending the transnational capitalists? Because they want to play, the transnational capitalists want to play the labor arbitrage. They want regions of the world that are cheaper to make goods and to have them imported in to the United States, either sub-assemblies or full assemblies. Depends on the product. But the bottom line is this. We have a neighbor, Canada, that has imposed tariffs on the United States, and we've had administrations in the past that weren't willing to do anything about it. Now we have an administration, aka Donald Trump, that's willing to do something about it. And then you got a well-heeled Harvard grad that used to run the Bank of England, all right? Well-heeled individual, used to be part of the overseers for the corporation of Harvard, all right? This guy is going to say that he's going to defend the status quo. And the status quo is have tariffs on American goods so it gives them, that protects their markets. Well, is that really the intent of free trade or even fair trade? People want fair trade, not free trade. But the reality of the situation, he doesn't care about his workers. He's protecting the well-heeled. He's protecting the transnational capitalists. That's who he's protecting. And Trump is literally launched a hellfire on the globalists because tariffs scare these transnational capitalists because that is the mechanism for them to make lots of money. They're playing this labor arbitrage, right? And they try to protect, and these countries try to protect their industries. But when the United States wants to do the same, they're going to try to retaliate or send it to the WHO hearing or whatever. The World Trade Organization, so the WTO. So we have a problem here. He's going to defend. But who's he really defending? He's defending transnational capitalists. And to think that this Harvard guy, well-heeled, used to run the Bank of England, is really for the little man, is really for the middle class? Yeah, right. Don't believe that for a second.
And you're also hearing from the Prime Minister of Japan, who is saying that they are going to retaliate in some way. You're also hearing from Tesla owner, Elon Musk, who is saying that Tesla will not emerge unscathed from this. It will have a significant impact on Tesla. But what about the U.S. consumer? What can we all expect eventually? Well, if this tariff goes
this is where CNN gets it wrong. There's a short term and a long term. There's the U.S. consumer and also the U.S. employed individual. And when you boot up manufacturing in the United States again, the middle class will be better off in the long run. So they only want to talk about the consumer side. What about the manufacturing side? What about the producer? What about the U.S. producer? Not just the consumer. See, what you've been sold for the last 35 years is you're a consumer. You consume. Just keep that GDP going up so the transnational capitalists can make their money. Because you're a consumer, not a producer. You're a consumer. You consume content. You consume iPhones. You just consume. Go to Walmart and consume. Let's see if CNN says anything about producing.
Stays in effect. The estimate is that the cost of production for vehicles could cost anywhere per vehicle $3,500 to $12,000 more. The key thing here is
you're just looking at you're just taking a very slim slice of a very long issue, like 35 years. All right, let's start the clock at NAFTA. All right, you could start it before NAFTA, but let's start the clock at NAFTA. All right. So for the last 35 years, transnational capitalists were moving manufacturing over to other countries, in this case, let's say Canada, and playing the arbitrage, labor arbitrage, reducing manufacturing in Michigan and putting it in Windsor, Canada, and importing it at a cheaper rate. So for the last 35 years, it's harder to have a family in the United States. It's harder to buy a house. It's harder to put your kids through school. Because for the last 35 years, your jobs went over to Canada, to Mexico, to China. And they want you to get all worried because your car that you're going to consume is going to cost maybe $3,500 more. It is time to get off of this importing deflation issue because it's not making America strong. It's gutting its manufacturing base. And you have now kids that are too stupid to even be able to read, write, and do math. But they just want you to consume. And CNN, they're not doing too well with the ratings. And ratings, low ratings means the bill rate for the advertising is low. Now, who are the ones that advertise on CNN and these large media houses? Multinational corporations. Do you think CNN is actually going to do an expose on the benefits of tariffs? Of course not. Why? Because it would hurt their income stream. And that income stream is the advertising dollars from the multinational corporations.
Stay in effect in order for U.S. car makers in particular to do what President Trump wants them to do, produce and assemble all cars here in the U.S.
So like a long time.
Exactly. A couple of years. It'll take a couple of years to do that. By then, Trump may be out of office. So really...
So isn't it better to kick... we're supposed to kick the can down the road for another 35 years? And destroy our economy? Or is it time to take the pain now for to have a better life in the long run? Isn't that the whole reason why people save? Is to suspend your consuming now so you can consume later. All right? You're building a future for yourself. It is better for the society to take the pain now. But they don't want you to think that way. Oh, this is all political. Oh, it'll take 2 years to move the plants here and to test all the, the subsystems and blah, blah, blah. Right? And then Trump's almost out. They're not thinking the long term. What about the next 50 years of the manufacturing base in the United States? Because we've had too many people that have lost their understanding of what made America so prowess. And it was its manufacturing capability. We have lots of resources, but you got the crazy libs that want to stop you from using those resources. You can't have a society that's functioning if all you do is push paper. You got to make things. You got to design things. You got to engineer things. You have to have a strong base for infrastructure. But we've had that our infrastructure's weakened. And when you have kids that aren't learning how to build stuff, literally, you got dumb kids.
Automakers trying to understand, is this going to happen on April 2nd? How long it will be in effect? Because that'll determine what they're going to do for the future of their car manufacturers.
And they've made clear that goes to consumers. That does not eaten up by our foreign trading partners, as they're saying.
They are not going to want to absorb all of this. It ultimately
Guess what? Here's a great idea. Don't buy a car for the next 2 years. Force the issue. Because what will happen is that Ford will drop their prices. And you probably would save money. So they're saying here, cost of production vehicles in U.S. plants will go up $3,500 to $12,000 depending on the option package. Do you absolutely have to have a car in the next 2 years? If you have to, why don't you buy used? Weather the storm in 24 months. Force the issue where it forces the OEMs to bring down the price. You stop buying their cars, they will drop their price down $12,000. Trust me. But you need to consume.
Unfortunately. Vanessa, thank you so much. A lot to come from this and its impact on the broader economy now as well. Thank you so much.
All right, that is the opening bell on Wall Street. And now, that's where the markets just open. Right then and there, we are watching how they react to the announcement from President Trump of these new 25% tariffs across the board on imported cars and, importantly, car parts. You can see the Dow dropping at the open here. Let's get right to CNN's Matt Egan.
Now, the Dow did drop in the morning, but like I said, it's it's pretty much mean reverted that drop. And the S&P 500 is, at this moment in time, is up 8 points. So the market digested it.
And hearing about what investors think of these moves.
Yeah, John, well, we're seeing markets open lower, although not dramatically lower. I think this is actually a relatively subdued reaction from Wall Street. We did see auto stocks take a hit yesterday when the White House announced that these tariffs were coming. You see they're all in the red right now. The big three, GM, Ford, and Stellantis, led by a 7% drop for GM. Honda, Toyota also in the red. Keep in mind, all of these auto stocks, they fell yesterday as well. It's interesting that the losses are not even more significant in the auto sector because really this announcement of tariffs sending shockwaves across the industry. I think there's two reasons. One is auto stocks were already beaten down ahead of this because investors were bracing for trouble.
Two, there's some skepticism that the tariffs that have been announced will actually kick in. I talked to veteran analyst Dan Ives before, and he said investors are not really freaking out because they don't really believe it's going to happen. He said if it actually happens like this, it would be Armageddon for the global auto industry. The problem, John, as you know, is the North American auto industry.
Really? They've created such a supply chain that it's going to be totally Armageddon and it's going to be the destruction of the auto industry. No. And if they really need to move fast, they can move fast. We need to bring back manufacturing in the United States. Why do Americans buy products that are made from someplace else? Why? Especially from countries that actually prevent us from selling our goods to them. It's time to get off of the stupid train.
They treat the continent like it's one country, not three. You see parts move freely over the border multiple times, sometimes for free, right?
The automakers look at these three countries, the United States, Canada, and Mexico, as one country, an economic union. So let me get this straight. The CEO of Ford Motor Company is telling you about your constitutional rights and the need for sovereign borders. No. The Ford Corporation views Mexico, Canada, and the United States as one country because we are Ford.
It's been built up for years, decades, and it's not really clear how do you kind of unscramble that egg. I mean, the interconnections are just so tight. And we also have heard from other analysts who said that, this is from Cox automotive analyst, economists, who said that if these tariffs kick in next week, that it would be doomsday for the industry.
I gotta say, there's two things that are fascinating about that. Number one, the scale at which they think this could be problematic. But number two, the fact that people don't really believe it because the president has backed off so many times over the last month or so, negotiating effectively with himself in a way.
Yeah, that's just part of the uncertainty here, right? The president announces something, he often dials it back, but sometimes he doesn't, and then he'll escalate elsewhere. It's really hard to make sense of it all.
The other fascinating dynamic has to do with Canada, which is that...
And this actually is a really great strategy for negotiation because the other side doesn't know what you're doing.
President Trump created a phenomenon. Canada is now an adversarial partner here, and they're in the middle of an election. So one would think they're going to fight this hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there's been a number of concerns in the market and among economists and consumers coming into this week, right? Obviously, uncertainty is very high. We have inflation that seems to be kind of stuck uncomfortably high. Confidence is low. And it's really hard to see how this auto tariff announcement helps any of that. In fact, it probably makes all of it worse, in part because of the point that you just raised, which is retaliation, right? This move is so massive that it is almost a slam dunk that other countries, including Canada, are going to have to retaliate by putting steeper tariffs on items that are made in America.
Now, if they have to push so hard, they know that these tariffs that they have placed on American goods before Trump and to try to save their industries is the only way that keeps their country afloat. So they have to do tariffs. See, they can't play fair. The Canadians can't play fair with their industry. All right? They don't have the manufacturing prowess. The United States does. So they're really worried. And not only that, again, the transnational capitalists want to play labor arbitrage. All right, so they're going to fight really hard. The transnational capitalists have lots of money, and they have lots to lose if the United States says, we have a constitution, and we have a border, and we're going to protect our workers, and we're going to protect our industries, instead of this amalgamation of a trade union.
That just adds to the uncertainty and potentially slows down growth, hurts the jobs market, hurts inflation. There's a lot here.
All right, watching it closely, Maddie, and thank you very much.
CNN's Christy Lewstaff reports on how these new auto tariffs will impact U.S. allies in Asia, home to some of the biggest car makers in the world.
The potential impacts could be huge, with the Japanese Prime Minister saying now.
See what I mean? The biggest transnational capitalists in the world. Like I said, the tariffs, they're going to try to scare you that Trump's tariffs are going to be hurting you. Now, it may hurt for some products in the short term. Maybe. We're not for sure that that's the case. All right? But it might be short term. But the thing is that short term or long term, it is devastating for the transnational capitalists. And I would love to see the transnational capitalists have to whine and cry to Trump and say, please, mercy, uncle, right? And beg, for it to stop. But it's really easy. Unravel this supply chain network, and that if you want to sell these high value added goods in the United States, manufacture in the United States. It's really simple. And not only that, it behooves the transnational capitalists to build in the United States. Why? If you really believe in climate change or global warming or whatever you want to call it, or just environmental issues, doesn't it make more sense to have the manufacturing and the consumption in the same country instead of wasting energy, having these parts getting shipped all over the world? What is it, transnational capitalists? Are you really worried about the climate? If so, why are you allowing it? This is worse for the climate if that's the case. They don't really care about the climate. What they really care about is the labor arbitrage. And that's what Trump is knocking at the knees. The ones that have the most to lose are the transnational capitalists, not the consumer. But they are going to try to create that thought that it's the consumer that's going to be worse off. That's not the case. It's going to be the transnational capitalists.
All options are on the table after U.S. President Donald Trump announced these new auto tariffs of 25% to be applied on all imports, targeting the world's biggest auto suppliers, including key allies here in the Asia-Pacific region, Japan and South Korea. Now, these new auto tariffs will kick into gear next week, with collection beginning on April the 3rd. It will apply to cars, it will apply to trucks. As for auto parts, and that includes stuff like engines, electronic components, transmissions, that will be subject to an up to 1 month reprieve. We've been monitoring investor activity and reaction ever since the news broke, and shares in South Korea and Japan have been skidding this day, and it comes as a surprise to many. I mean, just a couple of days ago, Hyundai, the South Korean automaking giant, announced plans to invest $20 billion in the United States, and earlier this month, Honda, the Japanese auto giant, said that it was planning to move the production of the Civic from Mexico to the U.S. state of Indiana to reportedly avoid potential tariffs. Now, we did hear from the Japanese Prime Minister earlier today. He addressed the tariffs in a session of Parliament, and we have a quote from him here. Let's bring it up to you. This is what you heard from Shigeru Ishiba, who said this, quote, "Japan is a country that is making the largest amount of investment in the United States, so we wonder if it makes sense for Washington to apply uniform tariffs to all countries. That's a point we've been making, and we will continue to do so." Analysts say that these tariffs will deal a heavy blow to the Japanese economy and to the South Korean economy as well. We heard this from a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations who posted this on the social media platform known as X in regards to the auto sector. This is what we heard from Brand Setzer saying this, quote, "Imports from Korea have been growing strongly and now top $35 billion or 2% of GDP. So Korea is more exposed relative to the size of its economy than either Germany or Japan," unquote. Last year, in 2024, the United States imported some $474 billion worth of auto products. And if you bring up the list of top global suppliers, let's bring it up on the screen right now, you will see the following nations. You will see Mexico, Japan, South Korea, Canada, Germany. Every nation on this list is a close ally of the United States.
Alrighty. Don't be fooled. The transnational capitalists have the most to lose in the long run. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the ashwagandha root. This will help to control your blood glucose levels and your cortisol levels, bring down inflammation. Turmeric is an antioxidant, so it's going to soak up free radicals, but it also helps to bring down inflammation. Stack these together to help bring down inflammation at the vascular level. That will help reduce plaque buildup, but also bring down the inflammation and help your immune system. Chronic inflammation is immunosuppressive, so you want to bring down chronic inflammation. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, take the turmeric and the ashwagandha, help with your blood glucose levels, bring down inflammation. This stack helps your cardiovascular health and your immune system. Now, if you work out and you want to recover quicker, taking the stack will also help with that because it's bringing down that inflammation that was produced during your workout. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. I also want to talk about another stack that's really important to help with your neurons. Ubiquinol is the most bioavailable form of CoQ10 that you can get. Ubiquinol, is an antioxidant, so it's going to soak up free radicals, but it's also helping with the health of your mitochondria, so your energy levels will go up, and it helps to protect your neurons. So take ubiquinol every day, especially if you're 40 years of age or older. NAD Plus is a supplement that will boost up your NAD Plus levels. That will increase your energy. It'll also help with healing your DNA damage. NAD Plus helps with cellular DNA damage and with mitochondrial DNA damage. So if you need to heal your DNA damage, you need to take this supplement. People that are older are going to accumulate more DNA damage at the mitochondrial level or at the cellular DNA level. So taking this supplement will boost up your NAD levels, your NAD plus levels, and help with that repair. Also, NAD plus helps to protect your neurons. So a great stack to protect your neurons is to take the NAD plus and the ubiquinol together. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, all caps, discount the number 5. You get $5 off any order. Stack them the way I'm telling you to. I'm giving you dual purpose ways to stack these so you get more bang for your buck. And not only that, these are things that I take as part of a much more comprehensive anti-aging protocol. So please, if you want to protect your neurons, and you need to if you're 40 years of age or older, take the ubiquinol. It's the most bioavailable form of CoQ10 that you can buy, and NAD+. Stack them together, protect your neurons. Okay. Let's go to Bloomberg again.
Jeannie Canzano, Shape and Fay, tackling the optics surrounding the administration. Coming up right here on the fastest show in politics. This is Bloomberg.
All right, so they're on commercial break. They're on commercial break. So let's take a look at France 24 to see what they have to say here.
I have an itch in my throat that I cannot scratch, or can I? Clear 2 liquid is powerful allergen relief in an instantly soothing liquid.
Not only is it good for Jerusalem.
We are demonstrating against our government because we think that what they're doing is destroying democracy, and hopefully we'll wake them up or we'll get them to call an election.
Critics say it marks an authoritarian
What is happening in Israel is there's infighting going on between the conservative movement and the ultra-liberal movement. Now, let's get Fareed Zakaria's, Dr. Zakaria's take on the group chat. Now, most things that Dr. Zakaria says is just wrong, but let's see if he says anything correct this time.
There's no harm done because the attack was unbelievably successful that night.
Fareed Zakaria, host of Fareed Zakaria, GPS, is here now. So, Fareed, what does this whole incident reveal about this administration?
Well, it's a great question. Let me just begin by pointing out, Aaron, that we don't know that the attack was successful.
Saudi Arabia inflicted these kind of bombing attacks on the Houthis for years and were ultimately not successful in actually defanging them. So, but put that aside for a minute. Look, what the broader issue this reveals is an administration that has kind of contempt for the processes and institutions of the liberal democratic state that the United States has built. You know, it's go into a department if you're Doge, don't bother to learn anything about the process or the procedures, fire everybody. You're at the NIH, just stop all the grants. You know, there have been these elaborate procedures by which scientists get funded. No, stop that all. Go into the courts, and the courts ask you for documentation for reasons why you're deporting people. And they just don't provide them. They effectively define court orders, and the courts and the judges are saying, look, you're not following the normal procedures we do. So this is really, to my mind, the most vivid example of this complete disrespect for the institutions, the norms, the procedures by which the American state, the American democracy has been functioning, because a lot of these people have contempt for all of this. This is at the end of the day to them the deep state. Well, what this reveals is sometimes it's the deep state has deep security procedures for a reason, to protect lives.
You know, I'm also curious, the response around the world, Fareed, has been, and from European allies, rather muted. Obviously, you saw Europeans in this thing called, nobody wants to help them, God forbid, right? They were called pathetic. And that there's more where that came from, Vance's Munich speech, right? We all know that. And yet, the context is, I don't know if you saw this today, but the EU put a thing out today citing rising global tensions, saying that citizens should stockpile 72 hours worth of food and other essentials in event of an emergency, whether that be a war or an attack, right? This is Europe, and they're being told to do that. I mean, you read that and you pause. In the context of this Signal chat, what are the top echelons of European government, European national security? What do they really think about this?
Oh, they don't care.
So there are two things going on. One, there is a bit of surprise and bewilderment about the callousness towards these security procedures, because the U.S. has always been the gold standard on all this kind of thing. The U.S. has always been the place where if the Secretary of State, let alone the President, goes somewhere, they have to construct a skiff, a special compartmentalized security booth in which emails, phone conversations take place so that nothing is revealed, because the United States is the only global superpower with military power around the world. So there's always been the sense that the U.S. Does this stuff at the ultimate standard of security. But the larger issue again here is what it revealed, particularly in Vice President Vance's comments, which, really he represents the kind of ideology, if you will, of MAGA, which is that the United States for 80 years has seen itself as the protector of the free world, as the guarantor of the security of the free world. It is at the center of it, right? But what was revealed is that J.D. Vance thinks of it more like we're running a protection racket. And what we need to figure out is if there are more European ships that are getting help than American ships, then why don't we do a shakedown of the Europeans? No president of either party, no vice president for 80 years would have ever said that.
The context of this chat obviously was an attack on Houthis, right, who have been sending missiles into Israel. Right, it's all tied with the situation in Gaza. There's a significant development there on the ground, which is large crowds of Palestinians in Gaza have been protesting against the war there. And actually, Hamas is the reporting here for you. And this is the second day of that. The Hamas says, this does not reflect the Palestinian overall view. They're implying that this is really an Israeli thing, that Israelis are getting this to happen. How do you see it?
I think it's a very important development. I think if it's happening, the United States and everybody involved should encourage it. Look, Hamas has been terrible for Palestinians. Hamas has been one of the most important obstacles to a Palestinian state, to a two-state solution, for Israel to have any degree of trust and faith in the idea that they could live side by side with Palestinians. Anything that weakens Hamas helps the Palestinian people. It's very important to make a distinction between the Palestinian people and Hamas, who have been misleading them for the last few decades.
Fareed, thank you. Let's go now to Democratic Senator Adam Schiff, who sits on the Senate Judiciary Committee, also former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, as our viewers well know. So, Senator, all right, here we are. It is an extraordinary moment, and you just heard President Trump saying this is all a witch hunt, and he does appear to be referring to Signal sometimes as some sort of a conference call. It's a bit unclear. What do you say to him?
Well, President Truman was the buck stops here. Donald Trump is the buck stops anywhere but anywhere near me. That effort at deflection, I really don't know. I wasn't involved. He's now claiming Hegseth wasn't involved. It is really pathetic, but what it tells all of us, what it tells the national security professionals, what it tells people in the Pentagon, what it tells the American people is there will be no accountability in his administration. He isn't going to hold people responsible. He doesn't want to fire people. He doesn't even want to talk about it. He wants to put this off as another witch hunt and other folks as kind of go-to deflection. But don't look at me. Whatever you do, America, I'm not responsible. That's just going to breed further mistakes. We can't have any confidence this can be rectified if all of those people on that chat are basically saying, there's nothing to see here. Okay, yeah, it should have been classified. They can't even admit that. Jim Himes properly read the very guidance that the intelligence community gives on a discussion exactly like this one. And the DOD guidance, although Tulsi Gabbard tried to deflect, is almost exactly the same. This was heavily classified, or it should have been, and there's no escaping that.
Well, and of course, there's no escaping that phones that were on this are compromised phones, that this didn't go into any sort of protocol. I'm also curious, Senator, what you make of, there are a lot of people in this chat who should not have been there, okay? Lots of them. I mean, you don't have a conversation with staffers and people at the top with operational security attack plans. It's not something the U.S. government does, at least until now when we see this. But the vice president would not be in this chat. The head of the CIA would not see a strike plan package, right? This would not happen. But in all the people that were in there, there's one thing that I noticed is not there. The head of the Joint Chiefs, right? So they're putting all this information out, but not to the operational military guy?
It is very bizarre how they chose the people on this chat. It was almost as if Walls wanted to sort of brag to this crowd of people what was going on with this operation. But you're absolutely right. There were a whole lot of people with no need to know. It is, yet another element of why this was so poorly handled, and that is they should have been talking about this on Signal. It should have been highly classified. They should have had nowhere near the participants in this conversation, even in a classified space. And then to essentially deny or try to denigrate the seriousness of this means that they're not going to address it. It is the sign of both the inexperience and incompetence of a lot of these people. Hegseth way out of his depth. He passed by a single vote. That vote was J.D. Vance in the Senate coming in to break the tie. That has not aged well. But more than that, I look at someone like Ratcliffe, who does have at least some modicum of experience, and nowhere in the chat does he say, hey, people, we shouldn't be talking about this on a commercial app. Tulsi Gabbard had no experience. She has no business being there either. But for Ratcliffe, it was even more inexcusable because he knows better than this. But none of them are willing to really contradict the misuse of power. They're really seeming like they're drunk with power. And there's a kind of arrogance about what we witness in this chat. Arrogance towards our allies, arrogance towards national security protocols that should be followed, just incompetence and arrogance, which is a dangerous mix for the country.
A dangerous mix in any setting, and certainly at the top of the U.S. government. Thank you very much, Senator.
It's just another case of CNN saying that Trump can't do anything right.
What do you see?
All right, let's go to Bloomberg here. Turkish Tufts grad
It's
detained.
all over the internet. We have to take a step back and, of course, say that we do not know, and this is part of the problem, if she was indeed or is being charged with aiding and abetting Hamas. that would be illegal and that could get her detained and thrown out of the country. The problem here is that all people know is that she co-authored, she's a Ph.D. candidate, and she co-authored an editorial in the student newspaper last March, which did not mention Hamas. It took on the administration at the university, and it was calling for them to divest from their connections with Israel, and it was talking about her concern about the Palestinian people that had been killed. And so the concern is that they are taking people up off the street and throwing them in jail without due process because of their political views. So that is the concern, and that's why we're seeing, these, 1,000+ people out in Powder House Square who are calling for her to at least be brought before a judge and charges against her being made explicit.
The Mass Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, said, quote, "It looked like a kidnapping," unquote. Senator Ed Markey, of course, Democrat from Mass, quote, "Trump sent masked law enforcement officers to arrest Rumeysa Ozturk, a Tufts University grad student with legal status, without a criminal charge," unquote. Chapin Fay, what's your thought on this? Is the impact corrosive, or is this, in fact, going to help Donald Trump politically because he's doing what he said he was going to do?
I'll tell you what's corrosive. Speaking of kidnapping, there's still an American in captivity in Gaza. They have the remains of other Americans that they refuse to release. Hamas is a terrorist organization. If you are here on a student visa, you are a guest in this country. If you are supporting Hamas, a terrorist organization, and making your fellow students feel unsafe on campus, you got to go. That's plain and simple. We talk about, outrage from Democrats. Donald Trump sneezes and you get outrage from Democrats. So I think we have to go down a little layer here, right? There will be due process for this woman. They will have to show some evidence of what they're alleging, right? And that will play out. But if you are a guest in this country and you are supporting terrorist organizations and calling for death to America or whatever else all these Hamas supporters are doing, you should absolutely be sent back home.
Well, you just said a couple of important things, though, Chapin. If, in fact, there is due process, that changes the story. That's one of the points of criticism here. This is somebody who so far has not been charged. But are we in a world in which a student op-ed results in a visa being canceled?
I don't know, right? I don't know. Like Jeannie said, we don't know what the evidence is or if there's evidence there. And of course, if there's no evidence and she's just a student who wrote an editorial, then she should maybe be able to stay. But the United States government in America gets to pick and choose who gets access to this country. This is the whole point of what's going on. And you're seeing some real world implications happen. And, it's not pleasant, right? But it's also not pleasant that American Jewish students are getting harassed. It's like Nazi Germany. The left likes to call Republicans Nazis, but we're not the ones who are preventing Jewish students from entering buildings, taking over administrations in a violent manner, and then asking Jewish students for papers. This is all preposterous. If there's any shred of evidence that she has any connection to Hamas, I mean, you're seeing here in New York, right? The Columbia group that has been doing these protests and have been taking over buildings was reactivated after being dormant moments before October 7th. I mean, that needs to be investigated. This is absolutely preposterous. It's outrageous. And if you are actively calling for death to Americans and you are not a citizen and you are here as a guest, you got to go.
I completely appreciate the spirit of what you're saying here, Chapin. The fact is, though, we wanted to know what would happen when this stuff started happening. Forget mass deportations for a minute. In this case, targeted student protesters on campuses, just like people wondered, what will be the impact of family separations if that starts to happen again? Jeannie, seeing sometimes changes perceptions. Does seeing this video change the way you're looking at this?
It doesn't change the way I am looking at it, but certainly it can change people's views, and nobody knows that better than Donald Trump. I mean, he went on Meet the Press right when he was elected, and he said that. He told them that this is a concern, but let's just take a step back and let's just all agree that this particular woman has been accused of nothing yet that we know. There is no evidence she intimidated anybody, let alone a Jewish student. There is no evidence that she did anything to support Hamas. All we know is she was picked up off the street and she was a co-author of an op-ed in a student newspaper last year, which talked about the need to think about the Palestinians being killed and also asking her own university to divest from Israel. That is free speech. That is not unconstitutional. Now, obviously, if there is evidence that she is colluding with or materially supporting Hamas or any other terrorist organization, that would be a different story. But the concern of the people protesting today is that she has not been produced or charged yet. She needs to be, that's what the judge called for, and I'm sure she will be, but she was taken very quickly out of the state to Louisiana. And so all of this is concerning when it's looked at in total. These, the concerns that you're hearing out there about kidnapping and otherwise, this young woman is a Fulbright scholar, a Ph.D. candidate. And we need to be very, very careful how we treat people coming into this country. And so I do think there is a chilling effect, even in these cases where you would prove this stuff in the end. In this case, nothing has been proved.
The op-ed we're talking about was in the Tufts Daily last March. She identified herself as a graduate student for Palestine. They called for Tufts administrators to acknowledge the Palestinian genocide and disclose its investments, to Jeannie's point, and divest from companies with direct or indirect ties to Israel. The op-ed makes no mention of Hamas. So getting back to your point, Chapin, if there in fact is some evidence here, at some point the administration will need to make this public, huh?
Of course, and I would have liked to agree. I am personally a First Amendment absolutist. However, let's take it even farther step back. Should we be giving visas and student visas and guest visas to people who advocate for organizations that have Americans currently in captivity? I don't think so.
Right. Yeah.
So this comes back to the actual attainment of the visa. This person shouldn't have been allowed to come here to study, is what you're saying.
Well, I'm not making that judgment, but I think that's an argument and a discussion that needs to be had at a higher level, right? I mean, it is a privilege, not a right, to immigrate to this country, and I'm not anti-immigrant. We all come from immigrants. It makes this country amazing, right? That's the whole point of America. But open borders doesn't work, right? There are students who have left Columbia and these colleges because they are unsafe. And if you ascribe any other ethnicity or national origin other than Jewish or Israeli, we would be having a very different conversation about people who have been put in jail for making other students unsafe. But we're not. We're having a conversation about the right of someone to protest on behalf of a terrorist organization.
Got less than a minute left here, Jeannie. University officials say they're in contact with authorities. They hope Rumesa is provided the opportunity to avail herself of her due process rights. Is there a legal path for the school, or you just have to watch and see what happens?
Yeah, the university said they were not privy to any of this information, and so they seem to be sort of maintaining a watchful eye.
Most people are too lazy to do this, but it saves homeowners.
We must say we do not have evidence yet that she was protesting in favor of Hamas. Even if she was, that may be considered political speech, because what's illegal is material support, not speech. But so far, and you said this, Joe, the op-ed, which I read, did not mention Hamas, nor do I have any evidence, nor has the government produced some, that she was protesting in favor of Hamas.
Jeannie and Chapin are back with us with a lot more in hour two. Stay right here on Blue.
All right, we're going to go to the NPR CEO hearing. But before I do that, please get the vitamin D3. This helps to absorb calcium. It also helps with gene expression. It's a cofactor for gene expression. And it helps to get rid of cells that need to go into apoptosis. You stack it with K2, that's going to help to absorb the calcium. You do some resistance training, and it's going to help you to deposit new bone matrix. So do resistance training, take the D3, the K2, also take calcium supplements or drink milk. That's what I do, and build your bone density. But it will also help with your cardiovascular health, because D3 and K2 work together to slow down the depositing of calcium around plaque. And over time, when you take the D3 and the K2, it can slowly pull out that calcium deposit around that plaque. And then stack it also with nattokinase. Nattokinase helps to break up clots because it's fibrinolytic, and nattokinase helps to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. So it's going to help to improve your total cholesterol. And less LDL means less LDL that's oxidized. That means less plaque formation. So take the K2, the D3 for bone health and cardiovascular health, and then stack it also with the nattokinase to supercharge the cardiovascular stack. So this is a dual purpose, helps with bones and cardiovascular health. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Hosts of NPR PBS appeared before lawmakers on the newly formed DOGE subcommittee, hoping to shore up more of your hard-earned tax dollars. Needless to say, there was plenty of fireworks. Take a look.
First of all, I do want to say that NPR acknowledges that we were mistaken in failing to cover the Hunter Biden laptop story more aggressively and sooner.
Do you believe that America is addicted to white supremacy?
I believe that I tweeted that, and as I said earlier, I believe much of my thinking has evolved over the last half decade.
Do you believe that America believes in black plunder and white democracy?
I don't believe that, sir.
You tweeted that in reference to a book you were reading at the time, apparently, The Case for Reparations.
I don't think I've ever read that book, sir.
You tweeted about it. You said you took a day off to fully read The Case for Reparations. You put that on Twitter in January of 2020. Do you believe that white people inherently feel superior to other races?
I do not.
You don't? You tweeted something to that effect. You said, I grew up feeling superior. How white of me. Why did you tweet that? A few years ago, NPR educated America about, quote, the whole community of genderqueer dinosaur enthusiasts. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of tax dollars? Your health advisor at NPR also stated in an interview that, quote, fear of fatness is more harmful than actual fat. Would you like to explain how fear of fatness is more harmful than actual fat? That's an editorial at NPR.
I am not familiar with the editorial, and I don't believe that was published during my time here.
It's called Diet Culture is Everywhere. Here's how to fight it. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars?
I think any reporting on health is an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars, yes.
Has Miss Piggy ever been caught trying to funnel billions of dollars in government contracts to herself and to her companies? How about Arthur the Aardvark? Has he ever fired independent government watchdogs who are investigating his companies?
You believe your reporters are fair? You said they're fair and they're working at it.
I believe that they work to me every day, sir.
They're non-biased. And yet, you have the voter registration issue. I mean, we're all human beings. We're all going to see through the world through a certain lens. And are you aware of any Republicans, any registered Republicans in your newsroom?
I couldn't say registered, but I know we have conservatives in our newsroom, yes.
Okay, so the recent registration, when it was looked at, 87 Democrats and 0 Republicans registered.
I found that very concerning.
Yeah, I would. Not even 40 to 30 or 50 to 20, 87 to 0.
I don't even know how to react to that. So we have to bring in Fox News contributor, senior writer, by the way, for the Washington Examiner, Joe Concha. I'll let you respond to that because I have, one word, 2 words, depending on how you want to say it. Check and mate. Checkmate.
Yeah, I feel like asking a question or two, which is, how did somebody not pull a fire alarm or call 911? Because I've never seen such a blowout out on Capitol Hill like that before. I mean, it was just generally hilarious, Sean, to hear Catherine Mayer say her past statements and social media posts, some of which that were just read there during that montage, had no bearing whatsoever on NPR's editorial decisions. I mean, go listen to NPR for 3 minutes. Trust me, you'll have a decidedly different opinion. And if any of the folks from Doge are watching this and we're watching today, Elon, if you're looking for some waste that could be really easy to cut, look no further than, MS-NPR or MS-PBS. And as you just saw, Sean, its CEO, Catherine Maher, it was a human Chernobyl on Capitol Hill today. I mean, the fact that during the Biden years, it really was. You almost felt sorry for her, almost. But during the Biden years, NPR, here's one example. They stopped its tradition, 50-year tradition, of reading the Declaration of Independence on Independence Day. That's nice, right? Instead, they decided that having a discussion on how Thomas Jefferson and the Declaration of Independence were actually racist, they thought that was a better idea. I mean, Mayer alone, she called President Trump a racist, a sociopath during the 2020 election, all while sporting a Biden for president hat. It's on social media. You could go see it. So at this point, if she keeps this up, if the CEO of PBS keeps this up, they'll both be co-hosting The View by next week. And the big question here in the end, why should even one American taxpayer dollar be given to PBS or NPR? Because according to Pew Research, the audiences at NPR and PBS are among the most liberal in America. Nearly 3/4, for example, of NPR's and PBS's audience describe themselves as consistently liberal. Almost no conservatives watch. So, what's the old slogan here? Fair and balanced doesn't exist there. So I say make PBS and NPR be solvent on their own, just like every other news outlet. They've been around, at least NPR has, for 55 years. The government does not need to hold their hand and give them money anymore.
So the whole community of genderqueer dinosaur enthusiasts, fear of fatness is more harmful than actual fat. I think my favorite answer, though, was she said that she thinks her thinking has evolved over the last half decade. That means in the last 5 years. Okay, that means the person that believed America's addicted to white supremacy, the person that believed that America believes in black plunder and white democracy, the case for reparations, which she put out there, and that white people inherently feel superior to other races. So we're supposed to believe that her thinking has evolved in the last 5 years. And we're supposed to believe that. Sounds to me like an election year conversion, like this is I want to stay on my job and have the taxpayers fund my great way of life, and I'll say anything to save my job. You get the last word.
Yeah, in 2020, she believed that seatbelts and doorways were a part of fat phobia. But then in the last 5 years, that whole thought process went away. All I know is Democrats, when they flip-flop to try to save their jobs or just trying to conform to what the public wants to hear, that's called evolving. For everybody else, that's called flip-flopping and phoniness. In the end, elections have consequences. And the fact that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are in office, and Elon Musk for that matter, and what he's doing at Doge, it's a very good bet that the taxpayer spigot is about to end at NPR and PBS, and it can't happen soon enough, Sean.
I totally agree. When I was getting my MBA, all right, a long time ago, and I was traveling from work to school, and I would be listening to NPR on the radio as I was going to school. And it wasn't that bad, but it was biased, but it wasn't like super biased, all right? But the last 10 years or so, I mean, it's been really bad. And the last 5 years, it's been even worse. So I would love to pull funds away from NPR. Absolutely, absolutely. I don't think they deserve American taxpayer dollars. They're pushing an ultra-liberal agenda. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nanosilver toothpaste. This toothpaste will whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, help with the gum line, reduce that inflammation, improve the health of the gum line. And with good oral hygiene, you are improving your overall health. But not just that, you're reducing the chances of having problems with your vascular system or your valvular system, all right? A lot of people don't realize that bad oral hygiene, especially in your geriatric years, could cause inflammation and cause problems with the vascular system and cause inflammation on the valves of the heart. So you don't want that. That's really bad, all right? Because when you have inflammation at the valvular level, depositing of calcium could cause stenosis, or a weakening of the valve can lead to some sort of regurgitation. Really bad stuff. So you don't want that. Good oral hygiene is really important, not just for your teeth, but for your other systems in your body. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the toothpaste that I offer. This is a structural nanosilver toothpaste, very high quality. It's literally the best toothpaste that you can buy. Get a few tubes for your household. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off. I also have structural nanosilver gel. The structural nanosilver gel is a dual purpose product, right? You can use it as an aftershave. So guys, after you shave, use it on your face and it'll help to soothe your face and heal your skin. Women, you shave your legs, apply it on your legs after you shave. It will reduce that razor burn. If you have a cut, an abrasion, or a minor burn, put it on your skin, or the gel on your skin and it'll heal it quicker. You can use it as a skincare. Put it on your skin every day as a topical to improve the health of your skin. If you're not feeling well or people around you are not feeling well because it's the season, guess what? Put it on your hands, around your ears, around your eyes, around your nose, around your mouth, lightly coat your nostrils. It stays active for 5.5 hours. So have some at work, have some at home, get a tube or the quick dispenser, have it available when you need it. Use it as a skincare. It's a dual purpose product. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the structural nanosilver gel. Use it. Use it every day to help with your skin health. All right, let's go to Bloomberg here.
It also depends on the conversations they're having with the Trump administration, and they're engaged on a daily basis trying to figure out where this is going. And the big question is, okay, if Trump's first term is any guide, do we just need to see the other countries he's negotiating with budge on some of the tariffs they have on the U.S.? And at the same time, General Motors, Stellantis, Toyota say they're going to move a vehicle that's made overseas or in Mexico to a factory in the U.S.? Or do they open a new plant in the U.S.? Do they make a concession that way where they're going to invest more here? We've seen Trump already talking up the fact that Apple is going to invest more in the United States. He talked up a $21 billion Hyundai investment that they announced a couple of days ago. He likes to see these things. He likes to talk about them. So the concessions may be on two fronts. The countries, Mexico, Canada, the EU, who he's negotiating with, and then the companies here who he wants to see bring jobs and investment back. That may be the way that gets companies out of a long-term tariff structure that they find very difficult to operate in.
All right, David Welch, thank you so much. Bloomberg's Detroit bureau chief, helping us walk through the impact these tariffs could have on auto companies. But by extension, there also is a question as to how exactly these levies may help or hurt auto workers. And it is the impact on auto workers that the White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt was touting from the White House earlier today.
I would just like to emphasize these auto tariffs yesterday are a big deal for auto workers in the industry. And you saw the United Auto Workers Union, Sean Fain, who wasn't the greatest fan of the president on the campaign trail, came out this morning and applauded the president for this move, saying it's a great thing for auto workers who have been sold out by unfair trade practices.
Let's see if Jared Bernstein agrees, former director of the White House Council of Economic Advisors during the Biden administration, back with us on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio. Jared, good to see you. As always, obviously, during your tenure at the White House, we talked with you frequently about issues surrounding labor, including the UAW strike when it was ongoing. Is there an argument to be made here that those workers stand to benefit from the levies that were just announced?
I don't think so, and I've heard Ms. Leavitt argue that tariffs actually will make consumer goods cheaper, not more expensive. So I think some of this analysis is kind of upside down. In fact, it's widely agreed upon that tariffs are an import tax, and that at least some share.
And we're gonna supposed to believe this guy when he was asked, "How does the Federal Reserve work with printing money?" And he couldn't answer the question. And he's some sort of really important economist. He used to be the former chair of the White House Council of Economic Advisors. And he didn't know how the Federal Reserve worked, how money was created. And he's going to say how tariffs are really. It goes back to what I was saying. With a complex system, you're not really sure on the actual trajectory in terms of price appreciation due to tariffs. It's a complex system that has lots of feedback loops. And so he's going to use some generic theory, and then we don't know. We don't know for sure. Most likely, high probability it'll be short-term increase, but long-term benefit for the society.
I do think that would be an admirable goal, but I'm not sure why you have to start a trade war to get there. That's kind of like it's saying an admirable goal is to make myself feel better by not banging my head against the wall. That's true, but probably a good idea not to start that in the first place. Look,
why should we continue to be raked over the coals by other countries, and the only ones that are benefiting from it are the transnational capitalists? But long term, the middle class is not benefiting. You think the middle class is benefiting from gutting your manufacturing base so you can buy cheap goods at Walmart? Yeah, wake up.
I think that argument is just patently wrong. There's no evidence to support it, lots of evidence pushing the other way. Happy to take anybody through that argument, but I don't see pain first, gain later. I see pain first, pain later.
He's totally wrong.
Well, so
totally
wrong.
wrong.
A little bit more because
This is a guy. This is a guy that does not understand. This is a type of guy that does not understand the economic clustering and the importance of the manufacturing base for the middle class. Clown, just absolute clown.
From 8% to 9%, which obviously is not super dramatic. Jared, if this is not the means through which to have that manufacturing economy revival, what actually can juice it?
Yeah, really important question, Kaylee. So first of all, that calculation is based on zeroing out the trade deficit. That hasn't happened since the mid-1970s. We can talk about whether that's something that policy should try to do. I happen to believe that there are times when the trade deficit is a clear drag on growth, and particularly on some of our manufacturing communities. So some of this impetus or motivation makes sense, which takes us to the second part of your question. We had even more success than I expected when it came to what was called our industrial policy in the Biden administration. We saw a doubling of factory construction on U.S. soil based much more on carrots than sticks. Tariffs, just these kind of broad-based tariffs, I actually think targeted tariffs can have a role, but these broad-based tariffs have never been shown to lower the trade deficit. They've never been shown, even if you do lower the trade deficit, for that to translate into more factory jobs. We had a lot more success tapping an untapped demand or elasticity for people who wanted to build factories in this country in the area of clean energy, electric vehicles, battery production. And when I say people, investors, I don't just mean American investors, I mean foreign investors. We had a surge in foreign direct investment. Now, many of those factories are underway. Those shovels are in the ground, and that's still ongoing. But that has proven already to be a lot more successful than the tariff strategy.
People spent the 4 years, many economists spent the 4 years of your time in the White House with Joe Biden, Jared, predicting a recession. And getting back to the no pain, no gain situation here in your op-ed, you write, they failed to do so, continue to double down on their unpopular agenda. We may find ourselves testing Howard Lutnick's assertion that a recession will be worth it. So when does the recession begin?
Well, this is Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, saying, yeah, the policies that we're implementing, possibly could be recessionary, but it will be worth it because of the gains on the other side. And as I explained earlier, and as we go through in some detail in the piece, that's just a wrong argument with no historical backing, no theoretical backing. Every reason to believe pain now, pain later on that. As far as a recession is concerned, one thing going for the Trump team right now is that they inherited a strong economy, and at least as far as the hard data are concerned, it's still a very solid economy. I mean, I was looking at the UI claims this morning, and they're not even flashing yellow. And I think if you're not seeing layoffs in the labor market, then you are not really looking at recessionary conditions. Now, I also noticed that Goldman Sachs marked down their first quarter GDP estimate for this year, so the quarter that that ends at the end of this month, to 1%. Now that's down from something like, well north of 2 for Q4. And so that kind of a deceleration, that really could be problematic in terms of the labor market. But at least as far as the hard data is concerned right now, the economy is still solid.
Well, so when we consider the domestic economy and how it will compare internationally, obviously the impact of tariffs, Jared, will not just be felt in the United States, but in comparison to countries that will have to be grappling with this, like Europe, for example, which in many places seems to be abandoning austerity entirely, getting ready to spend on defense and stimulate. The U.S. currently is trying to really rein in federal spending. No such stimulus appears to be on the horizon. How could that ultimately stack or make the U.S. impact be felt more acutely than even the impact on other countries that the president is currently trying to influence?
Well, first of all, the trade isolation, the American fortress will go it alone, I think is really antithetical to growth in the near term and in the long term. I think if the president and his team were talking about a regional trade bloc, maybe North America, I think that maybe we could have a better conversation. But clearly, their actions and threats against Mexico and Canada suggest they're not even thinking in terms of regional trade blocs. And I think this is damaging for growth. And again, this is coming from a person who is well aware of the costs of persistent trade deficits and unfair trade on communities that have been left behind. In terms of fiscal pressure, I think we probably will see some fiscal worsening of the outlook from the tax cuts. And I suppose you could look at that and say, well, maybe there'll be some positive fiscal impulse there, some more spending. That's really a function of whether they're just extending existing tax cuts, which comes with no new fiscal impulse. That's just status quo in terms of its macroeconomic impacts, or whether they're adding new tax cuts. Now, if they add new tax cuts, which they have talked about, that could reduce the economy a bit more, but of course it worsens the fiscal outlook even more, and I don't know how markets are going to love that so much.
He was former chair of the White House Council of Economic Advisors. Now he's a free man. Jared Bernstein. It's great to see.
He doesn't know on how additional tax cuts are going to affect the economy, but he's for sure that tariffs are going to tank the economy. See the issue with these economists? They're biased. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Myotrol. I'm going to show you a interesting stack here where you're helping with your musculature, your brain function, your immune system, and your cardiovascular system. So you're targeting a lot of systems with this stack here. So Myotrol has flavonoids, polyphenols, and lignans. This Myotrol will help for gene expression to build muscle. All right, when you get older, your gene expression to build muscle starts to decline. So you need to take Myotrol to help build muscle and help maintain the muscle. And Myotrol will help with the mitochondrial health. So you're going to have more ATP, really important. You should be taking Myotrol if you're 40 years of age or older. And if you're an athlete, either younger or older, taking Myotrol will help to build muscle and also for you to recover quicker during your workout. All right, so if you're an athlete, younger or older, take Myotrol. If you're 40 years of age and you want to maintain and build muscle, stop the atrophy, take the Myotrol. Very important. It helps with gene expression. Now, let's talk about brain health. Taking Clarity Factor is going to get rid of that brain fog and have your neurons fire more often. And having your neurons firing is going to improve that positive neuroplasticity. You have dendritic connections, and the more connections you have, the faster you think, the better your memory is going to be. And what will happen is you're going to be able to concentrate on the tasks that you have, either at work or in school, or even if you're retired. So take Clarity Factor every day. All right? Drink it with filtered water. And the last part of the stack is olive leaf extract. Olive leaf extract will bring down inflammation. That's important for your immune system and for your cardiovascular health. And olive leaf extract also helps to bring down your LDL levels and increase your HDL levels, so you're improving your total cholesterol. That's very important to reduce plaque formation. So take olive leaf extract to help with your immune system and your cardiovascular health. Take the Clarity Factor to help with your brain health, and Myotrol to help with your musculature. This stack is pretty powerful. You're helping with your muscles, you're helping with your brain, and you're helping with your cardiovascular health and your immune system. please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Myotrol, the Clarity Factor, and the olive leaf extract. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off. All right, let's go to Al Jazeera here. They're talking about the tariffs with South Korean suppliers.
Under his first administration, he kind of ties up the stock market with the economy. We know that it's not, but he's aware when the market takes a hit, and he must be aware that his plans for tariffs are certainly causing the markets to take a hit this Thursday.
And Alan, as I mentioned, US car makers have fought hard against this. Has there been any reaction from the industry?
Well, Sean Fain, who is the leader of the biggest auto workers union.
The Venmo debit card, made for staying in the moment and on the move. Earn cash back easily, all with no monthly fee or minimum balance. Your money, your move. Venmo.
Any reaction from the industry?
Well, Sean Fain, who is the leader of the biggest auto workers union in the United States, says this is a great idea. It protects American workers. It means that more companies should build their cars in the United States. And that's certainly Donald Trump's plan. But the idea of getting a new car plant up and running within the next 2, even 3 years would make it possible that that could happen after Donald Trump leaves office. And the car companies are worried because they know that 60% of the cars that are bought, 50% of the cars that are bought in the United States are imported. And they know that 60% of the parts are brought in from abroad. And the worry is that these tariffs will add a big cost to new cars, somewhere in the region for an average family of about $14,000. And that could price many working class people and middle class people out of buying a new car. And of course, buying a new car is the auto industry's lifeblood. So they don't want to see that sort of thing. Donald Trump, though, he's insistent these tariffs are going in place. And on April the 2nd, everyone will be paying a lot more to get cars into the USA.
Okay, many thanks for that. Alan Fisher there for us at the White House. Mexico appears to be waiting to see what tariff figure actually comes into effect next week. President Claudia Sheinbaum says they will act to protect their economy and industry.
We have to defend the jobs created in Mexico, the jobs that exist, and defend Mexican companies too, because it is part of our fundamental job in the development of this country and in our relationship with the U.S. As always, it's based on the principle of the sovereignty of our country. Within the Mexico-United States-Canada trade agreement, there should be no tariffs. That is the essence of this trade agreement.
Greenland is gearing up for a visit by U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance on Friday. This is after President Donald Trump once again reiterated his determination to annex the island. Now, almost all Greenlanders oppose becoming part of the United States, according to the latest opinion polls. The Arctic territory is controlled by Denmark, which accuses the Trump administration of escalating tensions and interfering in Denmark's internal affairs, as well as disrespecting Greenlanders. Greenland's Prime Minister says the strategic island is not for sale. Rory Challens has more from a boat off the coast of the Greenlandic capital, Nuuk.
Seldom has Greenland felt more exposed. As you can see, this is an extraordinary place, a vast land, vast territory of ice and fjord. The kind of place where the raw power of nature is ever present, but the full force of power politics, international power politics, well, that's new to many people here. We have been filming with Uwe here, who's a fisherman who's very kindly taken us out on his boat. He doesn't speak English, but we've been talking about how people have been taking all of this. And he says that it's unsettling, to say the least, that people are feeling quite scared, perhaps like one of the little fishes that he uses as bait on his hooks, about to be gobbled up by something bigger. Now, Uwe says that he can see that there might be positives to a closer relationship with the United States. He says that perhaps the price of his fish that he tries to sell will go up. But he's very clear that he does not want American control, American ownership of Greenland, that Greenland should be free, Greenlanders should be free to pilot their own course in the world and not just swap Danish rule for American rule. But Donald Trump clearly doesn't see it that way. He's been saying very insistently that he wants Greenland, he wants all of it. And on Friday, we have a visit by the Vice President J.D. Vance and his wife Busha, which is the latest salvo in American pressure on Denmark and on Greenland. It's a highly controversial visit. It has been changed slightly to make it perhaps less inflammatory, but it does come at a very sensitive time for Greenland because we've just had elections here. Essentially, this place doesn't have a functioning government at the moment. There are negotiations for the formation of a new one, but this place is on tenterhooks. Very, very nervous at the moment.
Protests have broken out in the Indonesian capital and other cities against a new law allowing the military to hold more civilian government roles. Demonstrators in Jakarta tried to breach the gates of Parliament and threw Molotov cocktails into...
All right, let's go to Bloomberg here. There's an announcement that White House mulls pulling Stefanik's nomination.
Congress. Those are the taxes. That's the deregulation. That's the unleashing of energy. And tariffs is threatening to increase inflation. And of course, that's very painful if it happens. And so I think they are really waking up to the fact that this is more and more critical that they pass this reconciliation bill. So even if they think they've got it, it doesn't make an ounce of sense politically to take a short yes vote out of the House, especially in a state where the governor is blue and she has been told to slow walk any special election that would go forward after that. So I think it makes sense to keep her where she is for now if you really need to pass this reconciliation bill.
Of course, we got two specials next week in Florida. Two specials we'll be watching on Tuesday. Chapin, and there is talk that Democrats think they can flip a seat here. Republicans in the state think Senator Randy Fine will be all right. But is that why we're having this conversation? Because of what's up in Florida?
It certainly is playing a role. I think you're seeing the Democratic candidate running a little bit stronger than probably anyone anticipated. So they are, I think the Republicans are ultimately be safe. But this is the calculation, right? And they're watching this. And, per Gene's point, right, a lot of the Trump agenda hinges on congressional support. I mean, almost all Doge, right? If they're going to implement any of these recommendation stuff that's going to come next year, they need a willing Congress. And you've seen some Republicans like to, have a little independent streak, right? So you can't always guarantee it on 100% in your caucus. So all of this makes sense to me. It's the right thing to worry about. It's unfortunate for, Congresswoman Stefanik, having her sights set on the ambassador's role, but getting the president's agenda passed is the most important thing for Republicans in the Beltway, for sure.
Well, so when we consider that agenda, Chapin, and the budget reconciliation package that is expected to house basically the entirety of it, is there added fuel to the fire for Republicans now that we have a sense of an X date that, at least according to the Congressional Budget Office, could come as early as August, and that's if receipts don't come in low this tax season? Does that actually make this easier because they know they're up against that deadline to lift the ceiling?
I think so. I mean, all of the, all of these factors that we're talking about play a role, right? And, a lot of times in, particularly in politics, right, the perfect storm is brewing, right? So all the pieces have to fall in place. It's a very complicated thing, right? President Trump's agenda is unprecedented or controversial or, whatever word you want to say. It's going to be harder than typical to get things done and passed. So deadlines are helpful. Special elections are helpful. The Democrats trying to do everything they can to change the rules up in the North Country to prevent a Republican from replacing Congressman Stefanik. Like all of these things matter, right? The Florida elections, which you just mentioned about the budget process, everything mattered a little bit. But again, the driving force here, the driving notion is paramount, is getting the president's agenda done, right? So that's what the congressional leaders at least are focused on, hyper-focused on.
Agency heads trying to implement the Trump agenda as well. One of them is RFK Jr. Here's something that he was talking about, massive job cuts coming to the agency, Health and Human Services. Listen to the secretary.
Our department is filled for the most part with competent, conscientious public service, and yet the agency has been inefficient as a whole. We're keenly focused on paring away excess administrators while increasing the number of scientists and frontline health providers so that we can do a better job for the American people.
Judy, we've seen a lot of firings at a lot of agencies. We've seen some of those reversed in court. Thousands of probationary workers fired, brought back to the agencies, and it's unclear how many have actually accepted these offers to return to a job they were fired from. Is the secretary on the right track here? Does this make Health and Human Services more efficient, more effective?
This, I have to say, we have to take a wait and see attitude. First of all, we are going to see the birth of AHA, Make America Healthy Again. And this has been a long-standing commitment of Robert Kennedy Jr. and also the president. And so that is part of this as they combine some of these divisions. There is nothing wrong with consolidation. There is nothing wrong with efficiency. The big concern here is, and we heard it in the hearings when he was up there in front of Congress and Bill Cassidy asked him, can you both do that and preserve these critically important things that you do for the American people as it pertains to their health? Can you still deliver on these core health functions? And if he can, great. But if he can't, there's going to be hell to pay because this is a huge agency. And this kind of cutting, 10,000 people, this kind of consolidation, it is big. It is a massive, massive bureaucracy. And do they still deliver for the American people is going to be the question after he's finished with this.
Well, and do you think he can get finished with it without running into legal challenges, given how we've seen many government layoffs ending up in the courts, Jeannie?
I think that's just a big question. I'm not sure he's going to be able to do it in the way he wants, but I do think there are probably cuts and consolidations to make. But again, it's how, and so far we have seen do things that have raised red flags, like hiring a vaccine skeptic, like canceling flu vaccine meetings. Like these kinds of things are things even Republicans in the Senate didn't want him to do. He started to do them, and to your point, Kaylee, he may run into the courts as he tries to make these cuts and consolidations.
Shape and Fay, promises made, promises kept.
That's what I would call it. Listen, change sometimes is painful. Trump, like you said, Trump ran on all of this, including with RFK, and now they're trying to do it. And I would add, what they're trying to do and radically transform government is something that the traditional conservative movement has been trying to do for decades, right? The conservative movement has been trying to get rid of the Department of Education for decades. And President Trump seems to be able to have the political capital, juice, and know-how this time around to get it done. Of course, the courts are always an option for the other side, and we've seen them use it to great effect in various ways. So there will certainly be a lot of fights. Tying this up, that's why the House Republicans and the president are concerned about the margin, right? This is a battle over the president's agenda, and both sides are going to use every tactic that they can to get it done. So I do think it will be difficult. I think it's going to be painful. Yeah. I think they will have a lot of success, but some things are going to be prevented and stopped in the future.
All right, we're going to go to commercial here. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagens, the collagen peptides. This has an amino acid profile shown on the screen. You can take a look at the label on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Collagen is a dual-purpose supplement. It'll help with your bones, your joints, your cartilage, your musculature, your skin, your hair, and your nails. You get a big scooper. Take it every day, once a day, mix it with either filtered water or a smoothie. I take it with soft foods like hummus or yogurt or even applesauce. Take it every day. Now, if you want to help with your musculature and your bone density, do resistance training to help with your skin. Take vitamin C with it and drink filtered water to cross-link to help with the dermal layer. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get this very high quality collagen. Use discount 5 on any order and you get $5 off. Now let's talk about the second pillar of my core protocol. The first pillar is max 35 or max 14 to boost up your immune system. C60 is the second pillar to soak up free radicals. The third pillar is turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans to bring down inflammation and boost up your immune system. And the fourth pillar is the boomer boost to boost up your energy levels and your metabolism. So on the second pillar is the strong antioxidant C60. All right, it's very potent. You can get it in avocado, extra virgin olive oil, or in MCT coconut oil. C60 needs to be in a lipid, in an oil, for proper absorption. Take it on an empty stomach for best absorption. If you work out, take it before your workout so it'll soak up the free radicals during your workout, and you'll notice that you recover quicker. C60 is a molecule, 60 carbon molecule, looks like a soccer ball. It's called a fullerene, and it will soak up free radicals. When one molecule of C60 is soaking up all these free radicals, what's going to happen is that your energy levels are going to go up because your mitochondrial health will improve. So you're going to have more ATP. So that's really important for your cells. Also, the cellular stress will go down, so the cell will perform better and your tissues will perform better. That means your organ systems and your glands will perform better, your immune system, your endocrine system, even your neurons. Your neurons have lots of ATP, or needs lots of ATP. It has lots of mitochondria. And when you get older, your ATP goes down and your mitochondrial health will go down. And so the neurons just don't fire as well. And when the neurons aren't firing as well, then you start to have that neuroplasticity starting to recede. You don't want that. So you want to boost up the health of the mitochondria and reduce the stress in the cell. One way to do that is to soak up the free radicals that are in your neuron. So you soak up those free radicals and it's going to improve the health of the mitochondria. Your energy levels will go up, the neurotransmitters will be produced, and your neurons will fire those neurotransmitters and this neuroplasticity will improve. So C60 is a very strong antioxidant. Take a teaspoon a day, every day. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. It's cheaper per ounce to buy the higher ounce configuration. But taking C60 every day, no matter what ounce configuration you're getting, is really important. Take a teaspoon a day every day. You're going to notice these compound effects. Your energy levels are going to go up. You're going to notice that you're aging slower. You're going to have more vitality. You're going to think better. Your endocrine system is going to be performing better. Your immune system is going to be performing better. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. Either an MCT coconut oil, avocado oil, or extra virgin olive oil. Take it every day. It's really important, and you'll notice over a year period that you age slower. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, Bloomberg is on break here. Let's go to Al Jazeera to see what they have to say.
Dog-sled race? Is it because of the opposition from both people and politicians in Greenland and the politicians in Denmark?
Yes, that's a good question, and it's been interesting to follow. I think, as you lay out, there are two main reasons. The first reason is the reaction from Denmark, but primarily from Greenland, saying you're not welcome. This is really a bad timing. We ask you to not to come, because right now we don't have a government in place. This is a really bad time to visit. We've seen reactions from the Danish Prime Minister saying that this is unacceptable visit. We saw today the Minister of Defense saying that Donald Trump is threatening the Kingdom of Denmark indirectly. He said, so these are very harsh words in a diplomatic sense of it. So that's one element. The other element is the Greenlanders' reactions, and I think that means more in the US than actually the politicians of Denmark and Greenland. So we saw a couple of weeks ago, there were a huge demonstration in Nuuk, a couple of thousand people, which is a lot in in a town of just 25,000 people. So a lot of Greenlanders meeting with signs showing "Yankee Go Home, we're not for sale," led by Mutebe Il, who is still the premier until Jens Frederik Nielsen, who will take over the charge of Greenland very soon when they have a new government in place. So I think because of this reaction from Greenlanders, I think the consulate where the demonstration ended, they've sent back information to Washington, D.C. and say, oh, this really risks being bad publicity for us.
Right, so a pretty clear
And let's go back to Bloomberg here.
As we cover politics in the nation's capital, thanks for being with us on the Thursday edition of Balance of Power. Kayleigh, we were just talking about the potential for Elise Stefanik to either withdraw her name from consideration to be the country's ambassador to the UN, or maybe delay that confirmation because of the super thin majority in the House. You know, we're not done with all the confirmations here. In fact, there's an important hearing taking place today. Former Republican SEC Commissioner Paul Atkins having his moment in the sun here in a hearing that veered into a lot of different issues, including conflict of interest. Part of his opening remarks were earlier. Let's listen.
Unclear, overly politicized, complicated and burdensome regulations are stifling capital formation, while American investors are flooded with disclosures that do the opposite of helping them understand the true risks of an investment. It is time to reset priorities and return common sense to the SEC.
So a lot of the hearing did focus on what he would do at the SEC in terms of the regulatory landscape it could create when it comes to things like crypto, for example. But some of the hearing as well focused on the man himself, Paul Atkins, who after his previous tenure at the SEC that Joe just mentioned, went on to run Potomac Global Partners, a firm based here in Washington that had a lot of Wall Street clients. That's where the conflict of interest concerns come from that we heard about in the hearing today. And watching all of it with us here on Bloomberg TV and radio is Lydia Bayou, who covers regulation for us here at Bloomberg. So, Lydia, obviously the conflict of interest concerns we heard, for example, the ranking member, Senator Elizabeth Warren, highlighting extensively. Ultimately, though, that isn't expected to tank his nomination.
Not at all. He's got really strong support. And even Warren was by far the most kind of aggressive of the Democrats going after that record. It was touched on by a number of other Democratic lawmakers. But certainly he's got very strong support from Republicans who see him as sort of uniquely well qualified to run the agency, and especially at this time between all that's happening in capital markets and within government.
His personal assets valued at more than $328 million. He owns $6 billion worth of Bitcoin. This is, by the way, between Atkins and his wife. He will be divesting from some of these investments or all of them.
He'll be divesting from the majority of them. In a letter that he sent to Senator Warren today about some of her concerns with his recusals and ethics, he said he was divesting from, I think, at least 150 investments. But now his wife is an heir of the Tampa roofing family, so they have some kind of family personal wealth. He is keeping a trustee of many of the family trusts. So there are assets that he is keeping, but he said that he's met or exceeded sort of the standard requirements for someone who's going to be in this role.
Well, and of course, those assets are dwarfed in comparison to the assets of, say, Elon Musk, who he was actually asked about in the hearing today. Didn't want to comment on the SEC's actions against Elon Musk, but talked about Doge.
It's true. Yeah, he was asked sort of, would you go along with Doge if they come to your agency? And he said, yes, I would, certainly. And he'll be looking at whether or not the SEC is being a good steward of taxpayer money and how kind of like their mission fits in with what's required by Congress.
Great to have you back with us, Lydia. Thank you so much for making it clear that you won't have any trouble, it looks like, at this point, Kelly, being confirmed. Thanks for joining us today on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio. As we bring you back to the Signal story that we've spent so much time on this week, we heard from Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary at the White House, about this a bit earlier today as this story moves into a fourth day now after The Atlantic actually published actual excerpts from the texted attack plans that the press, or I should say Secretary of Defense, put on Signal. Let's listen to the press secretary.
Well, we have never denied that this was a mistake, and the National Security Advisor took responsibility for that. And we have said we are making changes. We are looking into the matter to ensure it can never happen again.
And this is where we start our conversation, Kaylee, with Denver Riggleman. We've been talking with a lot of different voices on this story, voices of experience. Denver, of course, former Republican congressman, but also is steeped in technology. He started an AI company, spent a lot of time working as an intelligence official in the United States Air Force, and he's with us now back on Bloomberg TV and radio. I hope I framed your resume properly here, Denver, because you have unique insight into what happened here with regard to whether this was in fact classified information, whether there was some sort of hack or a media hoax, because we're hearing all three in Washington right now. What do you think?
Well, Ben, thanks for having me on. I was listening to the prior segment, and I think some people are rethinking their Senate confirmation votes after what you've seen with this Signal debacle. And, my background, you did couch it pretty well, Joe, and great to be here with Kaylee, too. Here's the thing. I was an Air Force mission planner. When I said I actually deployed on multiple mission ops, was trained on F-15s and F-16s, B-1s, probably mission planned more strikes than everybody on that panel has seen or done in their lifetimes. And for anybody to say that this was a hoax, number one, it's impossible with Signal. Nobody can sneak onto there. It's obvious that Mike Waltz already had Jeff Goldberg in his contacts and probably was talking to him previously, which I pointed out before, right? That he probably was leaking or talking to Jeff Goldberg on some other thing, which is why he's so violently aggressive in pushing these conspiracy theories. But also when you look at what happened on that Signal chat, when you're looking at time over targets, when you're looking at a specific type of airplanes, when you're looking at a specific mention of the target, all that is at the minimum secret or collateral level. It's ludicrous to say that they weren't actually talking classified on those threads, especially when it was that far out from the strike. If you can imagine somebody else being added that maybe wasn't as ethical as Jeff Goldberg, what our enemies could actually do. Because if you know the airstrike or the platforms, you can infer the weapons platforms that they're actually carrying. So I find it laughable. And anybody who's been in ops, real ops like I have, in the United States Air Force or on the ground, or Marine Corps pilots, Navy pilots, Army pilots, they understand that time over targets, specific payloads or specific aircraft, and the target itself would be classified.
Okay, well, Congressman, help us work through the argument that the administration is making that even if all of that were true, these plans were not compromised, or at the very least not thwarted. This was a successful mission by all accounts, according to their telling, and that's why the president says this actually was no problem at all. What do you think?
I find it interesting that they say it's no problem to have a leak from the SecDef at the highest levels that was only by the good fortune that they had an ethical U.S. citizen that they had included on these talks to somehow say, just because we screwed up so badly that we could put troops in harm's way, and because it didn't, that means it's all hunky-dory. It's so ludicrous from an intelligence background, but also from a military background, but just common sense. Because when you look at what these individuals had pledged to do and how they've supposedly been trained and gotten all the security briefings, they broke so many protocols in this one incident. You wonder how many protocols they've broken in the past. There's something in the military when we say past performance is indicative of future performance. How many other screw-ups have they done or they're going to do? When you have people who have no business being in positions of power, who don't have the expertise, the acumen, right, or the judgment, most of them conspiracy theorists or believers that the election was stolen. When you have people with that bad a judgment, they're actually supposed to be holding security clearances. You don't want those individuals actually affecting operations based on their own bad decisions. And I think that's what we have right now is we have fantasy-based policy coming from the administration, but we have individuals that have been confirmed by the Senate, as you guys alluded to earlier, that really shouldn't be there. And I think when you have people who don't have the experience level or the acumen or the ability to plan correctly or can't follow directions, who don't know security, all of that together could be a disaster for the United States. And I think what it indicates is that they actually could be the reason that the United States has a debacle in the future based on their performance today and literally head should roll.
Well, the thing is that, I don't know, it looks like that might not happen here in Denver, and you might suggest otherwise, but the president is standing behind his team, and he's suggested there's nothing to see here. So is there a chance that there'll be a credible investigation led by Congress?
No, not going to happen. No. My guess is there's going to be an executive order allowing Signal tomorrow, to be used for classified operations, right? Where there's going to be some kind of preemptive pardon, for Signal users in the DoD. I mean, it's so ludicrous. And I think it's what's scaring our allies right now. And I think what people are concentrating on, the fact that the Signal, they invited somebody, they were discussing classified information right on a comms channel that wasn't authorized. But it's also how do our allies think about how they were being spoken about. There's so many cascading effects here, Joe and Kaylee, that it's hard for people that, have IQ above moron and common sense to grasp how this administration could defend this in any way. But we've seen this in the past. I mean, we've gone from where there's not going to be an investigation on this to reparations for J6, insurrectionists. So, let's not think that this administration is going to all of a sudden change their spots and have any kind of real adult in the room type of decision making when it comes to our troops in the field. And I think that's what it goes back to, is me being a military member. I just want to make sure that our troops in the field, the people flying those missions, our forward air controllers, those on the ground, all those are protected. And right now with this administration, what we saw with this debacle and releasing this information, I don't know if anybody in the military can feel 100% that this administration has the best interest of the military or our national defense in mind.
Well, and talk about the role our allies that you were just referring to play in ensuring the safety of military, or at least the obtaining of necessary intelligence, because you talked about the way our allies were spoken about, the idea that Europeans are freeloaders and shouldn't be bailed out. It'd be one thing if they were simply offended. It would be another if they decided the U.S. is not trustworthy in terms of receiving and transmitting classified information and intelligence they may have otherwise shared with us. What would be lost if allies started holding back some of that material?
Oh, the first thing that's lost, it really is our ability to maneuver and massage events that are happening in a foreign affairs environment. And I think that's what scares the hell out of me, is that we don't have this ability to dictate or to look at our best interests or to be helpful. That's sort of, we listen, people might say, hey, Dan, we don't know if it's a fantasy or reality, but we look at ourselves as sort of the moral do-gooders, the people that could come in, right, and give some of these security assurances to our allies. If our allies don't believe that, what happens next, right? And I think what they're saying, too, is there's no truth and fact baseline to any of the decision-making. It seems to be knee-jerk and based on fantasy, especially when you're looking at Ukraine. When I'm talking about air ops, Amy McGrath, Marine F-18 pilot, we're doing a new show, called Truth in the Barrel that's coming out. And we're talking about this exactly. The question you just asked, right, is how does all this actually affect our European allies, but how does this also affect Ukraine, right, specifically? Mm-hmm. So how do we affect Ukraine now, Joe and Kaylee? What is our position? J.D. Vance already made it clear when he was there before, right, that they only think Ukraine can be in NATO. I mean, it's just ludicrous to give up all of that sort of negotiating clout. So I think what you have is that the EU needs to look at going their own way. And I think you're seeing some of those positions when you're looking at Poland saying, hey, maybe we need to have our own nuclear program. Or you're looking at South Korea saying, hey, maybe we need our own nuclear program now. All the security assurance, nuclear assurances, all the weapons, all of our contractors, all of those decades and decades of building trust is broken immediately. And how do we get that trust back? So there's multiple cascading effects for the decision-making and the hyperbole that's coming out of the administration.
Denver, we've only got a minute left. President Trump had said repeatedly that the platforms that are used now to share classified information are cumbersome. They're not efficient. They're not effective. That's why they had to reach for Signal. I just wonder, from your technical background, never mind your political one, is it time for a new platform? Is there a classified friendly Signal, a government friendly platform that they need to start working on?
Listen, and I can't use all of the classified chats, but as back even in the middle of the 2000s, we had a secure chat called Jabber. You have secure chat all over the place, right? You don't need to actually absolutely go to Signal. You have encrypted phones. You have all that also. Are there things in the military that are absolutely bureaucratic and ridiculous? Yes, I was there. Gosh, I know Joe and Kaylee better than most, right? Yes, but don't break the law or be stupid because you think something else needs to be used. Try to do better. And I think that's what it comes down to with military ethics and integrity. Use what you have, and if you have to change something in the future, then work towards it then.
All right, we'll leave it on that note. Former Republican Congressman Denver Riggleman, also former.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost. This is the last pillar of my core protocol. This will boost up your energy levels and your metabolism. It has 68 nutrients. Go to my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take a look at the label. It's very comprehensive. This targets multiple systems. It targets your vascular system and your cardio, your cardiac system. All right, so your heart and your blood vessels. It will target your brain function and also target your musculature. And of course, boost up your energy levels and your metabolism. You will lose weight by taking this. Take a full scoop each day, either for breakfast or for lunch, every day. All right. Mix it with soft foods like hummus or yogurt or applesauce. You can make a smoothie with it. You can drink it with milk, mix it with milk, or mix it with filtered water, however you want. I take it with hummus. Now, you take that every day, and you either take it for your breakfast or for your lunch every day. Your energy levels are going to be boosted up. You're going to have a nice steady burn of energy throughout the whole day, and you're going to lose weight. You're going to notice the effects of this within 72 hours. Now, in terms of brain function, you're going to have more mental acuity. You're going to sleep better. You're going to be able to concentrate better. So please take the Boomer Boost every day. Get healthy. It's a great way, and you're going to save money because the cost for 1 month's supply is cheaper than what you're spending for a month for your breakfast or for your lunch, and you're going to lose weight and get healthy. Now, you get even additional benefits if you take the Gladiator barley or the heirloom barley with the Boomer Boost, but you don't have to. You can take it separately. But Gladiator barley is a high-density protein. You take a half a scoop or a full scoop, mix it the same way as for Boomer Boost, and you take it every day, all right? Gladiator barley is going to help with strength gains, detoxify your body, bring down inflammation. That's very important for your immune system, and also soak up free radicals with superoxide dismutase. All right, so very powerful stuff. It'll help you to build strength. Now, if you don't want to build strength, but you want all those other benefits, take the heirloom barley. This will detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals with superoxide dismutase. Again, half a scoop or a full scoop each day. Now, it works better. You can take it separately, but it works better if you stack it, all right? If you stack the Boomer Boost and the heirloom barley or the Gladiator barley, what you're going to get is you're going to be able to control your A1C levels better. You're detoxifying your body. You're bringing down inflammation. That's going to help with your immune system. It's going to help you to recover if you work out, and you're going to soak up free radicals. All right? Now, if you want that strength gain, then take the Gladiator barley. Take the Gladiator barley with the Boomer Boost. Okay? Do the resistance training, work out. All right? Now, this is for people that are older, 40 years of age or older, or even if you're an athlete. If you're an athlete, younger or older, you should be taking the Boomer Boost and the Gladiator barley as your pre or post workout fueling. And that way you're going to have the nutrients you need. You're going to have the protein for building up the strength, and you're going to be bringing down that inflammation and soaking up those free radicals, so you're going to recover quicker. All right? So this is a great way, if you're an athlete, younger or older, to fuel your body. But even if you're not an athlete, you're going to be able to benefit from this by taking the Boomer Boost and the Gladiator barley together every day. You're going to lose weight, you're going to build muscle, and you're going to be able to control your A1C levels. That means that you're going to be able to control your blood glucose levels. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take this. I have it in a longevity box, longevity boost box. Buy that if you want to take the Gladiator barley or the heirloom barley with the Boomer Boost. Okay? So the longevity box is cheaper than buying the individual products separately. So you get in that longevity boost box, you get the Boomer Boost and your choice of heirloom barley or Gladiator barley. All right? And you can use discount 5 on top of it. Or you can just buy them separately and use them separately and use discount 5 and get $5 off. It's up to you. But if you buy an anti-aging box or a longevity box, any one of them, they are designed at a discount compared to buying the products individually. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. This is the end of my transmission for today. I'll do another one tonight. Thank you for listening. And for the ones that have been watching the live stream on Rumble, thank you very much. For the ones that have been watching on YouTube, thank you very much. And the ones that have been watching my website live stream, thank you. And the ones that have been listening on X Spaces, thank you very much. See you in the next transmission. Have a nice day.